Not good.
Well, they were all kind of bad, but mine, all the stuff was like ripped off. I'll be wearing all the pieces of the leather. Are you leaving tomorrow?
No, Thursday morning. We fly in Thursday morning, go to the event, and fly back Saturday morning. So,
Oh, that's quick. I mean, at least you're staying a couple days, though.
yeah,
Do you know what the weather is like? Did you check?
like 35. It's rainy tomorrow, but then I was hoping for some snow, but I don't think I'm gonna get it.
Oh, no. Maybe at night. If 35's the high.
I looked. It doesn't sound too good.
Oh, it'll be beautiful though at Christmas.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So I'm trying to unwind that.
So much fun being home on the road.
Oh yeah. I haven't heard that in a while. Thank you.
That was said with empathy.
Good morning, Holly.
Good morning. How are you, Rebecca?
Very good. You?
Well.
Right. I think we're at 9 o'clock, aren't we?
Looks like it.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you. Whoa, let's see. We're going to do the invocation. You want to do the invocation?
Sure.
All right.
We're waiting for you, Kennard. Father in heaven, thank you for this day that you have put before us. Thank you for this time to come together and make very important decisions for our community. Thank you for the people that are here. I pray that you bless us with your wisdom. Give us guidance to make the right decisions, do the right things. Give a spirit of unity and community as we make these decisions, Lord. Thank you for this beautiful holiday season as we worship the Savior that you sent to us. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Holly, would you lead us in the pledge?
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you to our Citrus County Legislative Planning Retreat. This gathering marks a valuable opportunity for us to come together, share insights, and strategize for the future of our beloved county. As we begin today, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of James Toy, our Intergovernmental Relations Manager. James has been instrumental in compiling a comprehensive package of information for us today. This packet will serve as a foundational tool, offering valuable context and insight as we chart our path forward. Thank you, James, for your diligence and expertise. This is the first ever for Citrus County. Today, I think, is one of those opportunities that we have to ask ourselves, where do we want to go and how do we get there? These questions lie at the heart of our discussions and are essential to the planning process. As we just make these decisions about where to go as a community, it's crucial that we envision the future we desire for Citrus County. One that fosters sustainable growth, strengthens our local economy, enhances the quality of life for residents, and ensures that we preserve the unique natural beauty that defines our region. Let us think boldly and consider what kind of community we want to build for future generations. The chart, how we get there, achieving our vision requires collaboration, innovation, and commitment from all of us, local government officials, community leaders, businesses, and citizens. Today, we'll discuss policies, prioritize initiatives, and explore partnerships that will guide us toward our shared goals. By working together, we can craft strategies that align with our vision and execute them efficiently. Throughout the retreat, I encourage open dialogue and creative thinking. Let us harness our collective expertise to tackle the challenges ahead and capitalize on the opportunities that lie before us. I am confident that today's discussions will pave the way for a brighter future for our community. And with that, I am going to turn it over to our administrator.
Can anybody hear me? That was great information. First, I want to thank the leadership of this board. When we approved this position of James, the importance of that. I was at the Florida Association of Counties meeting several months ago, and actually somebody came into the managers meeting and said, how many counties have this type of position? And several raised their hands, several didn't. They said, you need this position because really legislated priorities are just not this event here today. It should be 12 months a year. And I always tell folks, if you want the crumbs, you don't have this kind of agenda and you don't strategically go after legislative things. But if you want to be at the table to get the meal, you've got to do this. So it's important to make sure that we ensure that our voice is heard, not only at the state level, but also I applaud the board also at the federal level. Because now we have a federal lobbyist, which are already seeing the fruits of that already, the benefits. And it just makes it a fair fight. So we're up against all the counties in Florida as well. So we want to make sure that Citrus County is looked after. So we need staff to be able to do that. So I applaud that. And James is doing an amazing job. Also, our department heads in the audience are doing amazing work. I think this is the most comprehensive approach that we've had, I think, in the history of the county. Of course, we won't approve all of these today, but I think it's a great exercise to go through. And again, as we continue to pave the way for the future of this county is critically important. So we got to think differently, we got to think boldly, but also we got to ask. And if we don't ask, we don't get. So we got to swing at every chance we get, at every ball that we get, to try to secure funding. And it's tough. As I talk with managers across the state and legislators, some of our partners here, our state folks and federal delegation, it's harder and harder to get that funding sometimes. So we got to have shovel-ready projects to actually, those are going to make the difference. So that's exciting with, I think, where the future of this county, where we're going. But I appreciate the leadership of this board to fund these kind of positions. They're important. The return on investment is already happening. So I want to thank you for your leadership. With that, I'm going to turn it back to the chair, and I'll turn it over to James as we continue on on this next agenda item.
James, take us away.
Well, good morning, Chairwoman Bays, Commissioners. Son, can you hear me?
Yep.
Fantastic. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning, and I want to thank you for your visionary leadership. As Mr. Howard just alluded to, this is the most strategic and comprehensive approach this county has ever taken. In these packets before you have a list of recommendations. They have been sourced from the hard work of our Citrus County staff, the Florida Association of Counties, as well as the National Association of Counties. This was put together to serve as a guide, really a template of where we can go as a county in lockstep with our departments here, with the state association, as well as what's going on nationally with our counties. And kind of on that note, talking about the national side, I would like to go ahead and kick it off, talk about our federal policy priorities, federal requests of Congress, by starting with our federal lobbyist. His name is Maurice Curlin. Maurice has been instrumental since he came on board, I think, well, it's probably about 2 months after I started here. He is with Alcalde and Fay. They're a well-established DC firm. They've been representing us since about June of this year. They have already made significant dividends pushing along the barge canal, getting permitting for that. We are very close to securing the final federal permitting barrier to get that fully permitted. And Maurice should be on the line. Maurice, can you hear us?
Hi, everyone. This is Matthew Kren. I'm a senior associate. I'll call in today. I work very closely with Maurice Kurland. He should just be joining in a minute or two. So if we can just give him a minute more, then he'll be right on. We'll be able to take it away.
One thing I just want to add, I want to thank our friends here on the federal side. One of the other added value items that they're doing for us now is vetting grants as well. So they're able to look at grants that we're looking at the federal level. That's another added value that they're actually doing for us as well, to say, in fact, these grants we get these literally weekly. They're constantly saying these grants are available. They'll also help us with pre-application. So I wanted to thank you for that added value that your staff is doing for us, which has been very beneficial in the last 60 days.
Oh, of course, yeah. So as you're saying, every Friday we send out our This Week in Washington. So it's available to anyone who wants to get our email serve. So the first part of it is a legislative update. So basically we go through what went over Congress that week, whether it be the National Defense Act, WRDA, or Social Security bill. We will break that down. After the election, we did an election review where we talked about upcoming committee changes or next administration selections. And then we also do a grant review, as you were just saying. So from protect grants to assistance of firefighter grants to safer firefighter grants, the whole spectrum, we try to deliver grants each week, as long as webinar alerts. And someone from our office is always on these webinar alerts or always able to talk about grants, or also on the beginning and end side. So on the end side also, if say the county does not get a grant, we're able to send up great grant debriefs with the administration as well. So from the beginning of the grant process to the end of the grant process, we're always there helping the county as much as we can. And I see Maurice just joined as well. I was just discussing the This Week in Washington process.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chairman Bays and Commissioners, Mr. Howard, Mr. Toy. We really appreciate this opportunity to visit with you at your legislative briefing. And these are interesting times in Washington. And first of all, I want to just say, and maybe Matt had mentioned it, that I welcomed having the opportunity to visit with some of you when I came up to Citrus County a few weeks ago. And since that time, of course, we've had communication with the county and with James with regard to a couple of your major items. Number one, the barge canal boat ramp, and that's been something that Matt and I have been conferring on. And there's been some real progress in getting that U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit underway. Last we had checked, and maybe Matt has already mentioned this, that is kind of in the hands of Mr. Eastman for, I think, just going over some of the conditions that are required for that permit. And then once that is signed and agreed upon, assuming those conditions are, according to what the county can agree upon and what the Corps can agree upon, that will be issued. And we know that's been a long-standing item. Really pleased that just in a short time since we were brought on, that's moving forward. The other items are transportation related, and I know I communicated with several of you about these. Your roadways, we know that's a major issue for evacuation route purposes, for just traffic mobility. And what we see is we don't know what this next Congress is going to do exactly. We're of course, taking a close look and prognosticating on where they're going to be, but arguably things will be somewhat similar, at least on the congressional side, separate from what the Trump administration is going to do, where Congressman Bill Arakis will be able to move forward with arguably 15 is kind of the ceiling on what an individual member of Congress can submit as far as what they call congressionally directed appropriations. And as a member of Congress looks at multiple entities within multiple counties, cities, other entities within their congressional district, to at least identify one or two of your projects that we can have submitted. And one of those or two of those would be some of your roadway projects, possibly also the barge canal project. So that's kind of what we see. And with the administration, I think it's important for me to, and Matt and Emily, who's from my team here, to discuss, while the administration has been talking heavily, and we know they're going to focus on border security, immigration, energy development, and government efficiency. If you're reading the papers about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, while they're doing those things, the Congress is going to continue to look at appropriations for things like infrastructure, and and you all have those infrastructure needs, public safety, emergency response. Of course, you guys coming off of these hurricanes. So those are kind of our what we see as setting the table for the Congress. You guys are very well positioned because Congressman Bilirakis and the entire Florida delegation, for that matter, there were no real changes except on the East Coast over Brevard County, where Mike Herodopoulos is taking over from retiring Congressman Bill Posey. But otherwise, except for the retirements of Mr. Gates and Mr. Waltz going into the administration, Florida delegation is staying strong and will continue to, at least on the House side, will continue to gain seniority. And then, of course, we will see who's going to be the next United States Senator to replace Senator Rubio, who, of course, is slated to become the next Secretary of State. And we're still in communication with his staff, but we will look to see who the next United States Senator is. So those are a few items, and I'm going to turn it back over to you all for any questions you have.
Board members? Nothing? Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments.
We appreciate this opportunity. James also, just so you know, he keeps us, we're in strong communication with him. And there was a couple other items that had been mentioned, what I call policy issues. And so one of which relates to, your interest in having sufficient broadband internet access there in the county. There was an affordable connectivity program that was part of the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed in 2021. And that had been authorized with some funding from the Congress. Right now, even at this late stage, that funding has not been renewed. We'll be looking for that in the next Congress and what the administration wants to do about that. And then a second question, which I think has impacts for your roads, is the question of the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, National Highway Safety Administration, looking at maybe some changes in allowances for truck weights. And NACO, the National Association of Counties, they've already come out in opposition to that. There is no rule pending, but those are two other policy items we know the county interested in, and we are already tracking that. We will see what the next administration does. I think safety has been a big issue, road safety, but then you've got some push back from some groups. Of course, they want to be moving freight. So we know the county's position on this, and we'll be advocating on it. So those are just two other policy issues that we want to mention that we were looking at, and James had asked us to touch base on those.
Thank you. I do at this time want to acknowledge that JJ Grow, our state representative, is in the audience. And JJ, if there's anything that you'd like to weigh in or ask of Maurice, please feel free to come forward and chime in.
No, I appreciate it. I'm fine on the federal level. Thanks, Maurice.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Kennard.
Yeah, I don't know if this is appropriate time or not. In reviewing at our federal policy proposals, is that something that we would talk about now?
I think so.
Of the four proposals that are here, the only one that I would really question, I'm not opposed to it, but the very first one, the Southern Rail Commission and the county taking a position that we want the state of Florida to continue their membership in this and actively pursuing funding for passenger rail service throughout the state. I don't know that, and again, I'm not opposed to them continuing that membership. I don't know how that benefits Citrus County, and if this is simply taking a position that this is our statement coming from the county, I'm fine with that. But I wouldn't want Maurice and his group spending 1 hour of billable time that we're paying for to pursue something that I fail to see the benefit for the county as a whole. The other three, I'm fine with the other three federal proposals, but that one just struck me as, I hope this isn't costing us anything to push this initiative.
And Commissioner Kennard, I don't believe that it does. This was really something that was born out of FAC. And this is going along the northern end of our state, along 10, and the connectivity over to Jacksonville, as I understand it. And James, feel free to chime in here.
No, you are absolutely right. So this is a Florida Association of Counties federal policy they recently adopted at their legislative conference. So Florida is currently not a member of the Southern Rail Commission. It's a collective of states that advocate for federal rail funding, and they've been incredibly successful doing so. They have a great track record. Really what we're looking to do is long-term expand passenger rail in Florida, and as it kind of alludes into here, yeah, it's going to be mostly focused on North Florida preliminary, but however, kind of long-term, what we would hope would happen is those rail networks would continue to expand throughout the state of Florida and long-term benefit Citrus County. This would be kind of a long-term play for us. It, of course, would benefit North Florida first, and it kind of trickle down from there. But it's really trying to get those rail networks throughout Florida, trying to get passenger rail to our coast as well.
No, again, I would say I'm fine with us taking a position on it. I don't want us getting an invoice for advocating for this.
And I don't think that is the intent here.
Okay.
It's just an advocating,
Just taking a position.
yes.
We think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea.
Commissioner Barrett?
I concur with Commissioner Kennard. When I read through this thing about the Southern Rail, it really didn't benefit our county or our area. It was the northern part, and it said to Orlando. So for us to be advocating, I agree with Commissioner Kennard. We shouldn't be spending any money of your time of, having you look into this for our county. We're looking for things that benefit our citizens, our county, our region along the Gulf. Unless they're gonna put in a brand-new rail right down the Gulf side from Tallahassee to Tampa, and I don't think that's gonna happen very soon, it would not benefit Citrus County one bit for you to spend any of your time going into this.
Well, being on that subject, I think we also have to just realize that Citrus County is part of a very dynamic state that is rapidly evolving. And as much as we want to stay focused on what Citrus County is looking for to have out of the federal policies and local policies, we also have to recognize that we are the 15th largest economy on the planet, and that there's $4 million of net taxable income moving into this state every hour of every day. It is a tremendous responsibility for those that are representing us in Tallahassee to try to balance the needs of 67 counties. And we have to work together. We can't just separate Citrus County off as an island. We have to be able to effectively manage what's going on across the state, because we can't live myopically. What happens around us affects Citrus County, whether it's the people that are driving from the south up through the Suncoast Parkway and getting off at one of the exits to get gas or to buy a house or to start a business. So I think we have to keep our eye on the ball and really look at what those impacts are that are affecting Citrus County beyond what's happening just in our own backyard.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And I agree, I'm fine with absolutely everything that you just said. I just want to make sure that, again, that this is just us taking a position. We support this, I just don't want to pay our federal lobbyist to be out there advocating for it.
Understood.
If there's any question on what we support it. Now let's move on to number 2.
Hey. And with that said, if there's no other input, we'll let James take it over.
Sure. Would you like to move on to the next item, the Affordable Connectivity Program?
Yes.
Now, this is a congressional funding program that lapsed within the past several months that would help offset the cost of broadband internet for residents. And one thing that shocked me was that Citrus County had over 20,000 households here that were direct beneficiaries of this program. So the funding has lapsed. There has been calls by NACO and other counties across the country to renew that funding. Really what we're calling for the 119th Congress to do is say, hey, restore funding to this program, help out our 20,000 plus residents who are direct beneficiaries of this, and create a pathway for more affordable broadband internet.
James, real quick, did you look at what happened with Spectrum in this package?
Related to ACP? No, I couldn't speak to that.
Because I know, I live pretty rural, and I've spoke to many people that live off of Stagecoach and over in Floral City, and they receive part of this broadband money, and if they actually paid 100% to get it, 900 feet, 1,000 feet, whatever it was, back to houses that were off the beaten path, if you will. And what they told me, the people that were working for Spectrum, they were part of this grant for the broadband and high-speed internet. So I don't know if that's something we want to kind of take a look at and see. I know they were taking it all the way into downtown Inverness at some point, the high-speed or broadband.
No, I think it's a great recommendation. I will, specifically as it relates to Spectrum and the ACP, they have voiced support for this position as well, just for your awareness.
Any questions?
So the next item is a little timely here, is disaster preparedness and recovery. And Maurice, I'd like to kick this over to you. I know you and I have had extensive conversations as far as what we can expect as far as resiliency funding coming out of the 119th Congress, what kind of reforms there might be to FEMA. Could you speak to that at all, kind of what you're seeing as the general temperature in Washington?
Yes, glad to do it. First of all, there needs to be that's one of the positions in the incoming administration that's not been set as to who's going to be the next FEMA administrator. Some of you may be hearing some of the rumors out there that former Florida Division of Emergency Management, the head of that, formerly under Governor DeSantis, was Congressman Jared Moskowitz, and interestingly, we're hearing his name being bandied about. Of course, he's a Democrat, but did serve in the DeSantis administration. So that would be real interesting, and we'll see. So with regard to this, there's been two bills that we've been tracking. One called Disaster Simplification Act, in short, and that's one thing from a policy standpoint, because when you have to apply for these, individuals have to apply for public assistance, or if you're a business owner, loans that are low interest go through the SBA, and even homeowners on the loan side go through the SBA, and of course funding through FEMA. So Congress, of course, in these remaining days before they're supposed to adjourn, has a administration request for close to $100 billion to address the impacts of the recent hurricanes, which of course hit you guys. And so that's still being kind of debated, the costs and the exact amounts, and what Congress is going to ultimately decide as kind of its final legislative package in the next couple of days. We're tracking that. So on the one hand, dollars to replenish those accounts that are within FEMA for the remainder of the fiscal year, because they're on their fiscal year. We're only in a month basically 4 or 5, and then we've still got the remainder of fiscal year 2025, plus any other future disasters that could hit around the country, and then the SBA to replenish its accounts, which actually need to be replenished now. And people have been applying, but SBA is saying, hey, until we get the funding from Congress, we're not able to issue those loans just yet. So that's number one. But on the policy side, which James, you're talking about, what we will see is, I believe, look, and this goes into what the Trump administration's been talking about, efficiency and addressing these kind of response needs when there is a disaster, so people can get what they need a little bit more easily. One of the things we had talked to James about, commissioners and Mr. Howard, Of course, you guys wanted to have a disaster recovery center located within Citrus County, and that took a while to stand up because of just the extent of the damage across, I'll just say southeast United States, into even North Carolina and parts of Virginia. So I think we're not going to see a lot of major changes because FEMA, was hit kind of with this unprecedented back-to-back hurricanes and disasters. But they are trying to simplify things, make things easier, and that's in line with what the new administration wants to do. So we'll see that, and Congress has several bills that are teed up on that. And then overall, I think, from just a political standpoint, fortunately, there's pretty much in Washington, in Congress, in the administrations, agreement that, look, when it comes to these disasters, we've got to work together, and it's overall not a partisan issue. I mean, obviously, we were in a presidential election this past year, and you had the president coming down, and Governor DeSantis was making his rounds, et cetera. But overall, once the dust settles in Washington after January 3rd and then January 20th on the inauguration date, I think we're going to see again more effort and emphasis by the Congress and the administration to say, hey, what do we need to do to prepare communities ahead of time? And part of that is pre-disaster mitigation and additional infrastructure to address these needs because we're seeing more severe or more frequent storms. And so that's how we see it. But, what the nitty gritty looks like, we're going to have to wait to see the new administration and who the new administrator, but just kind of giving you some of the inside baseball. Maybe we'll see Congressman Moskowitz as a Democratic appointee. And, there's been some others, but he's actually a sitting congressman right now over there on the East Coast in Broward County.
Maurice, thank you so much. And commissioners, do you have any questions related to this particular item?
No, sir.
Fantastic. Moving on, we have mental and behavioral health. This is another NACO proposed policy. This is chiefly focusing on trying to improve federal resources to local governments to combat the mental health crisis we're facing in our country. As you know, local governments are on the forefront of this fight, and we're looking for any additional support that we can acquire. Any questions I can answer on this particular page? You guys are keeping it too easy for me. And then lastly here, this is an issue that's relatively interesting, and this is the federal truck weight limits. So currently, the set federal rate on weight for heavy-duty trucks is 80,000. And what Congress has been exploring, there's been some bills that have been floating out there. They haven't got a whole lot of traction, is increasing that cap. And now you might say that's beneficial for commerce. You can move goods and services a little easier. The issue is it puts significant strain on our county infrastructure. It will wear our roads faster, and as we're all keenly aware, we're struggling to keep pace as it is. So Maurice, I know that we've talked on this a little bit as far as, some momentum in Congress. Are you seeing anything out of the 119th that we might be able to expect?
Well, again, sometimes these weight limits, as you all probably have seen, of course, in emergency situations, they'll have some waivers and exemptions. Let's say in moving debris, for debris removal, and I think that was somewhat of the case coming out of the two hurricanes. But for overall freight purposes and overall policy, look, there's counties. I don't have to tell you all, commissioners, chairman, and Mr. Howard, Mr. Toy. Look, you all, you have in your responsibility all these county roads, and I think. NACO and Florida Association of counties across the country have been pushing back on this because ultimately you guys have to maintain those roads. And so, we are prepared and we will continue to advocate in line with that against the raising of that. And so I think that's just where you all have to be. And other counties are watching this carefully. And like I said, the national organization, this is one of their priority issues that they've talked about for months. I was at a briefing back early in the fall, and this was one of their top issues. So it's something that counties across the country are looking at, and we will be weighing in against it because this is a question of you all are trying to upgrade your roads. I know I've talked to a number of you about that, and for you to have more stress and impact on that would only make things even more difficult. Now, obviously, we know there's a need to move goods, move freight, but at a significant impact to counties if they were to raise these weights. And there's a safety issue too. On top of that, I don't want to forget that. I mean, the heavier these trucks are, it's just basic stuff here. It creates a greater hazard if, God forbid, there's accidents and those types of things.
Quick question, is this driven partly out of the shortage of truck drivers across the nation?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that's part of it. You've heard and you're reading a lot about, these driverless trucks, and trying to address that shortage through technology. So I think that is part of it.
Madam Chair, can I ask one?
Commissioner Barrick?
I have another question. Is this gonna make the trailers longer, like when they went from the 48 to the 54s? Are they anticipating making them longer with all of this, which would also affect our roads? Because the turning radius would be different, and the stopping distance would be different.
I can't honestly speak to that. You see these, around the country, you all see them there, where they've got to go in and get those trucks weighed. I just don't know the answer to that question on the length of them. We can research that, but certainly just this issue of, how heavy are these loads, and so how they're going to do that, and if they were going to allow it, how it's done, on the existing 16-wheelers, or would there be like an extended trailer? I don't know, Commissioner Barrick. We can research that aspect.
Okay.
So Chairwoman Bays, I would request that we seek consensus on these 5 items to move forward with our federal policy agenda.
Board members, do we have a consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
You have a
Fantastic.
consensus.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Maurice or our federal team?
I think we're good. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
You guys too. Thank you so very much.
Best.
We're here for you, and any other issues that come up, you let us know. And we're looking at some of the additional appointees that are on the way, and then things starting at the beginning of the year, fast and furious, I guess you could say.
Thank you so
all.
much for your time.
Thank you.
Chairwoman, would you like to move on to the state side?
Yes, please.
Fantastic. And we are being joined today by our state lobbyist, Sarah Susky. Sarah, are you here? Yes. Come on up.
The podium, please.
I'm not good at audiovisual equipment.
I think it might be on.
Is it on? Okay.
It is.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for having me here today and to talk about our legislative priorities for the year. I'm glad that our brand new representative is here to join us. He is amazing and is going to do great things for our community and for our state as a whole. And so just to give you a brief overview of kind of where things are in the legislature right now, we just had organizational session almost a month ago where our legislature elected a new Speaker of the House and Senate President. And so we're starting to hear about committee memberships and the committee structure that the presiding officers are setting up. In the Senate, we've kind of got everything. We know who is going to be sitting on committees and who is chairing committees. In the House, we're still waiting. Any day now, I think we'll hear who the chairman of the subcommittees are, and then the membership of the committees as well. But typically that happens around this time. We'll certainly know by the time committees begin meeting in January. And so we'll have After the holidays, we will have 5 committee weeks leading up to the legislative session, which begins on March 4th and goes for 60 days. After that, it ends at the beginning of May. And so, just a couple of things broadly about the session. We have heard from presiding officers a little bit about their priorities, but they have been a little bit keeping things close to the vest. That is very interesting. Sometimes we have presiding officers that say, here is a list of the things that I want to do, and they set out to get them done. And then other years, it's more like this, where people are being a little more coy about what they want to accomplish. But somehow they always find a way to do a lot during 60 days in Tallahassee. So we're looking forward to finding out what all of that is going to be. Mr. Curlin talked a little bit about the Florida members of leadership that are going to be moving to Washington, D.C. to work in the new administration. And that, interestingly, is going to cause a lot of dominoes to be toppled over here in Florida, with Senator Rubio leaving and our CFO Petronis potentially leaving. He's definitely leaving being CFO of the state. The governor will have the opportunity to appoint people to succeed those two gentlemen. There's certainly discussion of who that will be, but nothing is set in stone right now. In the mix have been a couple of senators, and maybe our state senator as well has been discussed. So we shall see what happens with that. And then with Congressman Gates and Congressman Waltz going to the administration as well, there will be special elections to replace them in Florida. And so it will just be interesting to see how the dominoes fall here. Budget-wise in Tallahassee, we talked a little bit about policy. I'm sure that we will be dealing with healthcare, we'll be dealing with insurance costs, with disaster recovery, and a myriad of other things. But in the budget, we know that the belt is tightening in Florida. We have had huge growth over the past several years since the pandemic and all of the federal money that has been coming to the state. That's starting to dry up now, and then as our state revenues and tourism have been increasing over all of that time, there is a potential for it to fall off a little bit in the future, not this year, maybe 5 years from now. But your leaders in Tallahassee wisely are anticipating that fall off and would like to see us kind of tighten the belt in the budget and be a little bit more careful about the appropriations that are asked for by members of the legislature. There has just been huge growth in that for the past couple of years, and so that's gonna come to not an end, but there will certainly be less money for member projects. Back to your legislative delegation, two incredible people. Representative Groh, who is here with us, he is going to be new in the legislature, but already has earned a lot of respect from his fellow members, and we're excited to see what he's able to accomplish. And then Senator Ingoglia is going to chair the Banking and Insurance Committee in the Senate. He has been in the legislature for a little bit longer and knows his way around pretty well, but that's going to be a very influential committee in the Senate. Certainly all of the insurance raises that everyone, every homeowner, every car driver has felt in the state is going to be addressed this year, and Senator Ingoglia will be at the helm of that conversation in the Senate chamber. And then it's going to be a very exciting year. So I'm happy to kind of answer any questions that you guys have and talk about the priorities that are on your list and anything else that might come up.
Sarah, we're excited to have you as our new lobbyist. We're looking forward to having your representation in Tallahassee and great things to come. Board members, do you have any questions? comments? It's on.
Hi, Sarah, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So when we talk about it today, my point is just being one commissioner when I discuss it with my colleagues will be that, especially based on what you're saying about the budget, we should have very few items that we're asking for and be laser focused on that because we have a new representative and I feel that if we ask for the world this year, it's gonna force him probably and you somewhat to decide what to go after. Would you agree with that? That we should pick few and just be laser focused on what we're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank you for the question. Things are going to be a little bit different this year. Back in 2020, when the pandemic began, that was kind of, I would say, the baseline for the budget that we're looking at right now. In the following year, we had a flood of federal money coming into the state coffers that needed to be spent. And, you know, the attitude for local governments was we should apply for everything just in case because nobody knew, you know, what was going to happen at the state level and at the federal level. And now as those federal dollars have dried up, I think we all need to take a step back and look at what is important to our community and really focus on those. So if we had 5 or 6 legislative priorities, at the end of the day, your representative and your senator are going to be asked for them, what are your top 2 or 3 priorities? And there are many communities that they represent. So if, you know, we had our number 1 priority for Citrus County, I think that would hopefully be on their lists and hopefully, you know, be considered for funding this year. So yes, you know, certainly something that is going to impact the county. Projects that have a regional impact in some way are always looked at favorably. But, you know, certainly something that the county needs help with, and that it's the proper place for the state to come in and assist.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Barrett.
Okay, Sarah, I got a question then. What you're suggesting is that we need to focus on the needs of the county that have been started, but we need financial assistance to get them over the finish line.
I think that's a great place to start. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kennard.
Yes, I've got a comment on one of our appropriations requests, and then I guess this is the appropriate time to talk about our state policy proposals as well. I've been an advocate for the Barge Canal boat ramp, and I think that particular project, not to push it above either of the other requests here, but that project in particular checks a lot of boxes. Being right on the Citrus-Levy County line, I believe that it is a regional project, that once this ramp is completed, that it would not just be Citrus County boaters, but Levy County, Marion County, Alachua County, boaters from our region would use that boat ramp to better access the Gulf of Mexico. It would also pull a lot of vessels out of the Manatee Protection Zone in Kings Bay, folks that are just dropping in the water to get out to the Gulf. And, you know, the straight shot out of the Barge Canal is a much easier route to make that happen, a much faster route. And ultimately, I think will be an economic driver on the northwest part of our county. So last year, when there was discussion of this moving through the legislature, it was brought to my attention that right at the 11th hour, question was posed of, you know, can you do less than your request? And what I had heard came out of the Lecanto building, I don't know if it's true or not, was I either need all of it or none of it. And that's not the case at all. We need help with this. You know, the request is going to be X. This is what we need to get this project finally moving. But if we get down the road and the discussion comes up that we can't get you to 5 or 6 or 7, whatever that number is, but, you know, we can go this route and get a couple million here, you know. Leave the rest of the battle up to us. We can find the rest of the money to make it happen. This is a ramp that's going to happen. We could use legislative support to help make it happen. Now, onto our state policy proposals. I had absolutely no issue with most of the 9 policies. The 2 that I do struggle with, and I really don't think it'd be appropriate to support at this time, are the local fuel tax indexing and electric vehicle registration fees, and I'll tell you why. Sitting on the MPO for 8 years, going back to 2016, we have been told by DOT that the gas tax money is falling off, that it's simply not keeping up with the construction costs of building roads, expanding roads, things like that, that there needs to be a different system. And then at the MPOAC meetings, we were told there that, I want to say this is probably 2018 maybe, that there were roughly 6 states that had implemented registration fees for electric vehicles because they don't pay the gas tax. Those 2 look like they are failing. It's a failing system for funding road construction. I would like to see the legislature find the intestinal fortitude to come up with a new system for building roads, for funding the building of roads. I don't know what that system is. You know, maybe it's a charge per mile on vehicle registrations. Certainly in a very red state of Florida, we're not going to support any sort of monitoring on our vehicles. I would very much be an opponent of that. But we register our vehicles yearly. Maybe there's a fee per mile that we use the roads, that everybody's paying into that. Whether their vehicle runs on hydrogen, electric, gas, whatever it might be. Or maybe they do away with gas taxes altogether and there's some sort of a statewide sales tax that funds the building of our roads. But driving up the cost by doing the local fuel tax indexing, driving up the cost of gasoline and then adding this, this nominal fee onto electric vehicles, all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on a failing system. I think the legislature has to find a new way for building, maintaining, and expanding our highways.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner.
appreciate your thoughts on this, Commissioner Kennard. Commissioner Bays and I, I'm sorry. Sorry. Commissioner Bays and I are very active with Florida Association of Counties. We sit on multiple committees, and we go through the long, onerous process of sitting there listening to commissioners that are on the committees debate all of these policy proposals. In fact, I got up and presented this very idea my first year on the commission, this exact idea, and one of the ideas that was floated was a per mile, basically a per mile charge. And your exact worry that that might end up being Big Brother monitoring was one of the reasons that it didn't really sit well. I think that this is an intermediate step to plug the hole in the dam. I do think that we do need to go for something that's much larger, but this is what Florida Association of Counties staff has vetted over years process. This is what the commissioners that show up and are part of the conversation have decided is the right way to go. And I thought that Commissioner Bay's commentary earlier that we are a rapidly evolving state that has to all work together, that was a perfect speech. I was, internally going, yay, Commissioner Bays. That was very well said. And so I would strongly suggest that we support what FAC has put forward because these have been thoroughly vetted. However, I would be happy to bring that up going forward. This is not a committee I personally sit on, the Finance and Tax Committee, but I'm happy to dig into that and see where we are with that to go forward. Are you on that one, Commissioner Bays, Finance and Tax? Then maybe you could speak to that more in detail.
The only way I would be interested in this is if every county imposed it. You know, every day we pick up the newspaper and read, you know, a sound off that says, oh my gosh, I live in Citrus County and I go to Ocala to buy my gas because it's cheaper. And that's because Citrus County made a decision many years ago to implement all of the gas taxes. And, you know, as many times as I know, we all tried to explain the fact that if you go to Ocala and you buy your gas, you're paying their sales tax and you're paving their roads. Because that local option gas tax that we charge here in Citrus County goes directly back to Citrus County and helping pave our roads. You know, it's been talked about vehicle miles traveled since I was a commissioner back in 2010 to implement something of that nature. I still don't know what the magic is, how we're gonna cross this hurdle, because it doesn't seem like we're ever, I mean, we have 23 million residents. We're projected to have 26 million residents by 2030, and another 3 million cars on the roads, and we have 140 million visitors. And they say that 50% of those come by car. So, you know, trying to find the magic on how we're going to do this, and I know we're struggling with connectivity and road network and all the things here in our county. Again, I don't know what it is, but I know that the more the fuel efficiencies of cars, the electric vehicle registration, some way that they're paying into the system. Again, I don't know what that magic is, but if it's something that we're gonna support, I would like to see it supported by all counties. It's not something that I'm willing to go out on the limb and say, we're gonna do it in our county and not have it across the state. I think it has to be all 67 county initiative. Commissioner Barrett?
I agree with both Commissioner Davis and with Commissioner Bays. As I sit here, I think about my insurance for the car insurance. What is one of the questions your car insurance asks you every year? How many miles did you travel, whether per year or per month? So when they bring up driving, you know, mileage, I have no problem saying this is how many miles, and I think the electric vehicles need to be paying their share. Currently, they're not. And I know different people, you know, friends that have the electric vehicle, and they're loving every minute because they're not going to the gas station, and their electric bill maybe jumps $5, $6 a month, and that's it. So somewhere, there has to be some way to pay for the roads. And they're using the roads. And if they're using the roads, it needs to be fair and equitable to everybody, but it also needs to be statewide. So taking it to, you know, the state level is a perfect place for you to do this. So I would really like to see this initiative pushed. Thank you.
Commissioner Finnegan?
I do agree with the electric vehicle registration fees for them to pay their fair share, but you know, I have all these feelings of caution with the extra taxes on gas because, you know, people are still driving to work. And I wouldn't want to hurt those that are working. I know there's a lot of tourists here and retirees coming down, snowbirds enjoying the roads also, but the backbone of Florida are those that are getting to work. So I do have some caution about the gas.
Commissioner Kennard?
Yeah, I think that all of us want to see the electric vehicle owners participate in this. And I think probably most of the electric vehicle owners understand that they need to participate in this to some degree. Again, I would just reiterate, I would like for us to be taking a position that is getting more people involved in helping to build the roads. And I don't think building on a broken system right now is the way to get there. You know, just the conversations that I've heard at the MPO and the MPOAC have been some degree of sales tax initiative. You know, the only caveat to that is that would not apply to rental. You know, business rental properties, things like that, where people are paying a sales tax. You certainly don't want them to get hit with something additional. In fact, I'd like to see that sales tax go away altogether, but that's a different conversation. You know, rental properties, that shouldn't have, but it should be products, you know, product services, things like that, where the state could look at on a, you know, 5-year basis or 10-year basis, whatever it might be, what they're going to need to continue to expand the network, the road network in the state of Florida. So, and I agree with what Commissioner Finnegan said, is that, you know, if we increase if we support increasing the cost of a gallon of gas, it doesn't hurt the people who are driving vehicles that are getting 25, 30, 35 miles a gallon. It hurts that average individual that's driving an older vehicle, a less efficient vehicle, and is now not only paying for the increased costs of inflation on everything else, but now it's hurting them in their pocket, filling up that older vehicle as well. So I just don't think it's the appropriate. I appreciate the amount of work that's gone into that. And again, of the 9 proposals, 7 of them I can support. The other 2 I think are trying to just build on a broken system.
Sarah, is there any chatter in the legislature about this fuel tax indexing, and what are you hearing in Tallahassee?
Well, there has been discussion for many years about the fact that our mechanism for paying for our roads in the state of Florida and in the entire country is it's not sustainable. With the electric vehicles, which are heavier than the internal combustion vehicles, so they do a little more damage to our roads than a gas car does. With the growing number of people who are driving them, as that changes, we're gonna not have any money for transportation trust funds at the federal level or the state level at some point in the future. There certainly has been talk about fees for EVs. In Florida, the proposals have been to take those fees and build more charging infrastructure, which it kind of exacerbates the problem that we're talking about right now, which is fantastic because we need more infrastructure for electric vehicles in the state. And so, certainly I think everybody recognizes that it's a problem. I have never heard anybody come up with the perfect solution for it, either at the state or the federal level. But personally, I agree with you guys. It seems like we need to just wipe this slate clean and start over again. The willingness to do that there at this point? I don't know. Sometimes it takes a dire emergency for government to act and actually do something, and I don't think we're at the dire emergency stage in this problem. But I know that there's plenty of support for addressing the issue. I'm not sure that it's going to happen this year, but it would be wonderful if it did.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Kennard.
Yeah, you had mentioned that I believe it was 50% of the visitors to the state come by car. How many of those are electric vehicles that still would not be paying their electric vehicle registration fee to the state of Florida? It'd be paid to Michigan or Indiana or Canada or wherever it might be. So they're still going to come here. They're still going to be using our roads and not contributing anything to it. And so I think if we're going to get involved in advocating for positions, statewide positions, I think we need to be advocating for real change. And maybe that real change means wiping out the gas tax altogether, or state gas tax altogether, and putting in a system that actually funds our transportation network.
Listen, I love our toll roads. I think there's ways that you could manage, you know, you could travel, you know, residents that are traveling at certain times of the day, it's charged one fee versus, you know, less congestion, at other times of the day. But to me, it's the perfect way to balance it out because everybody pays into that, whether you're visiting or you live here. I like the toll road concept. So board members, it sounds like we have a board member that is pretty passionate about taking the fuel tax indexing off of this list to get us to a consensus on our state policy proposals. What's your thoughts?
I could take that off.
How about you?
I support FAC.
Okay. How about you, Janet?
It needs to stay on there. We need to put even a Band-Aid till the legislature can move forward and come up with a completely new plan. You can't just stop. So I think we need to keep it.
I'm going to support it at leaving it on there at this time, and I'll tell you why. And I hear what's being said. It's not that it's going to pass. It's just an idea, and I think it forces the legislature to really start. If all 67 counties finally get on page to look at how we're going to fund transportation in the future, at least it tells them that we're coming to them with a unified voice, and that we're looking for options on how to bridge the gap. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I'm certainly not in favor of optioning, you know, to put this on each county at their discretion. It's not something I would want to do in our county. But I do think if we put something on there, it tells the legislation that we're serious about finding a funding source to continue helping with our congestion. So I'm going to support it. It sounds like we have a consensus to support. And is the consensus to support the balance of the agenda or the state policy proposals?
Yes.
Yes.
I would support the other 7.
You're outnumbered.
I agree. Understood, I'm fine with that.
Okay, board members, do you have anything that you want to talk about on our appropriation request?
Yes.
Commissioner Finnegan.
The Hulls River multi-use path and the barge canal, but Commissioner Kennard has already addressed that. Both of these already have funding in them. One has from the Restore Act. We already have state funding for the Hulls River multi-use path. So I feel like, again, being laser focused, we're working on projects. We should work on these 2 projects until they're funded. If each year, if each year we jump off of these and start looking at all these different things, and then we get little pots of funding for those, and every year we change, we're not gonna get anything done. Our projects are going to sit, and as it's been brought up for past boards, they would get funded and sit on the money and nothing would move forward. So I say we have 2 projects that have been funded. Let's make sure these further get funded. The multi-use path got funded again. Well, it didn't actually get funded again, but funding was appropriated for the multi-use path again last year. And of course, with the governor's cuts, it got cut. So it's my understanding from our staff that in January, the FDOT, who has this money, has been doing the surveys, should have more of a plan, and we can make some decisions at that time. And then by summer, have an actual amount. We're saying $8.3 million. Maybe it could come in less. It's government, maybe it could come in more, but let's not talk about that. Let's talk about hopefully coming in less. So I think that the state has put out millions of dollars already. Let's continue this. It checks the boxes for safety, for recreation, for tourism. It offers a huge benefit for the people that live there. Before I was elected, that was something people in Homosassa started telling me about right away. It's been sitting on the outstanding commissioner list, but no one will fund it. No one will fund it. No one's asking for funding. If you get there, you have to ask for funding. So my first year, we got funding. And then recently, I was out at a celebration at River Haven in Homosassa, and a large group of people were still, where are we on the path that's so important? Are you still working on that? So I'd like to see us continue with these two projects that have funding in them until we can get them done, and then we'll start some new projects.
Commissioner Davis, do you have anything to add on the,
I see that we added a monster one for the Inverness Airport, yes? Business Park. I assume that was you?
that was me?
It has all the hallmarks of you. I am obviously highly in favor of this, but it goes back to, and also the Cardinal Street. I like all five quite a bit. The problem is, as we've been told, we need to narrow our focus. So you've seen all five of these. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations?
Well, certainly, our firm works for you guys, for the county, so the direction of the county commission is what we will work to pursue in the legislature. And we also have a legislative delegation who have, opinions on priorities as well. That being said, in the veto exercise that the governor underwent this calendar year, but the last prior to this fiscal year, he indicated and kind of, I would say, laid down a gauntlet related to water projects and transportation projects, and said, we think, or we believe that water quality improvement projects, largely should go through the DEP grant program, and transportation projects largely should go through the 5-year work program through the DOT. So that was interesting, because that was kind of the first year that we had really heard of that. And I think, when this governor says something out in the public, it's probably something that he's gonna stick with. He doesn't speak without meaning what he says. So that's a different dynamic that we're gonna be dealing with this year in the budgeting process. The legislature is reticent to fund projects that have been vetoed in the past, although that being said, there was a lot vetoed last year. And I think there may be an opportunity to go back to the well for some of those projects. Generally, the legislature in the past has liked to fund things that local governments are unable to come up with the funds for. That's the purpose of state appropriations. But they also like things that really, that they can see that there will be an impact to the community for these projects. So there are, all of the projects that you guys have listed have great merit, and I think will, fit most of the criteria that the legislature has set forth. And that being said, I think it's a decision that's up to you guys. I can give a little bit of advice if to kind of steer you, but I know that, certainly the Barge Canal is one that we've heard quite a bit about over time. The business park is certainly something that fits a lot of that regional and economic impact to the community, but I think they all have merit. So.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Kennard.
One point that I missed on the Barge Canal ramp that I do want to make sure that we talk about is that's a project that's on state property. DEP owns that property. They are leasing it to the county, but should that property ever go back to the state now has an asset that they have invested in. We've put local money into it, as well as we've put the BP restore money into as well. So you've got local investment in it, as well as state investment, and regardless of what happens, it still remains on state property. And so should that ever go back to the state, they've got an asset that they've spent 50 cents on the dollar, building a great regional asset. And so I don't know that I would ever use the ramp, but I think it's a great project for us to pursue. Two comments, and I hate being the contrarian because I love advocating for these different projects, but two comments on the 41 improvements there at the business park. I would support this, but I think that we need to do this like we talked about with Watson Road last year. I think it needs to go through Department of Economic Opportunity, a grant avenue, rather than going for an appropriation. The second point that I would make on this is that the MPO administration has implored us to not ask for transportation project funding that would come out of the Transportation Trust Fund. That if we're going to ask for projects that are transportation related, that it be new money that comes out of the general fund. Because what happens is if these projects make it through the legislature, a project like this, that 7.3 million survives the legislative process, and then the governor vetoes it, it still comes out of that trust fund. Our district loses that money. So they have asked that please, if we're going to request any transportation funding dollars, that it be new money and not something that comes out of the State Transportation Trust Fund.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Fagan.
That's a perfect segue to my question. Did you add the Cardinal Street corridor study? I like that. I think that's necessary because of the Parkway. And that's a very narrow street. We don't have enough property on either side of the street. And it's a smaller ask compared to everything else. But I was gonna ask about the MPO for that, or grant funding, because Sarah was saying that transportation, the governor wanted that left better to grants. So I like that. I just don't know if appropriation is the right way to go after it. But those that have more experience with the MPO, I thought maybe I would ask that question for that Cardinal Street corridor study.
Commissioner Barrett?
I'm sorry.
I'm
I was
sorry.
asking, I didn't know if Commissioner Kennard wanted to answer that for me.
Well,
Is
I've
that-
got some thoughts about it, so when
Oh.
we get around to, I was letting kind of everybody chime in, and then I'll
Okay.
put my 2 cents in.
Thank you.
And we're looking at all of this page, correct?
We're just focusing right now on our,
The top part.
yes, for
All right, so
our appropriations right here.
When I look at the 13 that are on the list, okay, I initially said that we were gonna focus, or we need to focus on our needs and things that we have gotten started. The Barge Canal definitely needs to get to the finish line because it does benefit many people, many counties, many people. The fire station, number 8, that is a necessity. That is a need for the county in itself, and yes, that really does need to be funded. So when I look for other things, and I look for 5 main things, when I look through the 13, we need to do the septic to sewer, because that also benefits the nitrogen reducing the septic system. In other words, it takes 2 things into consideration by doing 1. The Lecanto Highway 491. I came home from a family vacation the day before Milton was coming in. And I flew into the airport and then I drove home. And I have to go up 491 for a section. And then I sat in the parking lot on 491 because 491 is 2-laned. It is an evacuation route. The state road ends at 44 and the people were being sent over to 491 because 19 was already backed up. So we need to move forward with we have, as a county, put money in from the impact fees to do a study. It needs to be brought forward quicker, not slower, to get 4-laned, because it is an evacuation route. If we take consideration of the people from anywhere south of Citrus County. So it's not a want, it's a need. And when I looked for the last, because I only went to 5 needs, Citrus County is a small county. And we really need to keep the SCOP program going, because that helps move the people in Citrus County, because we are growing. And as you can see, we went from so many people, now it's 200,000 that SCOP money will allow us to get. Okay, because that keeps increasing on the state level. So for me, there are 5 things that I would like to see pushed. The others, if there's time, fine. If there isn't, they're not what I would consider needed right now in the county.
All right. So in my research, what I looked at was the state budget has grown by 28.6% in the last 3 years. And House Speaker Perez made it clear that he wants his members to be more responsible on where they can make better and smarter choices by reducing spending. Senate President Albritton has touted tax cuts, deregulation, and reform to the legal climate and insurance industry. As I went through Florida politics, I saw where Nick DeCiglia is going to head up an expanded appropriations committee on transportation and economic development. And I say all of this because it takes me a little while to digest things and I think about them. And the reason that I put the access management to Inverness Airport Business Park on here and the Cardinal Street corridor, when I think about Citrus County and I look at our funding and I look at our community, it makes me cognizant of the fact that we need to diversify our revenue. We need to diversify our county. We're very centric in retirees and lower income. When we have 93% of our children are on free and reduced lunch, and we have statistics that are sour, in my opinion, about where our 3rd grade reading scores are, our 8th grade math scores, we need to do a better job of where we're taking our community. We have got to get into a position that as we have a lot of developers coming here, they're buying property, they want increased density. It's residential. We all know that the payer mix for residential development is putting us further behind the 8 ball if we're not attracting businesses. Our job is to diversify our community. We want to keep a sense of who we are, but we have to be able to put it into perspective. And when I think about the business airport park, the state has already given us $14 million. We've completed phase 1. We're going to be breaking ground on phase 2 in 25. We need the access management to get into that airport. I had a recent conversation with Senator Collins from Hillsborough County, and he's on this new revised expanded appropriations committee. Senator Collins is the senator that represents most of Hillsborough County, and he is a retired Army Green Beret. He's very interested in what's going on at MacDill Air Force Base, and I had a conversation talking to him. I said, look, we have this industrial airport park. It sits outside of hurricane evacuation. We've never had a direct hit. It offers a lot of possibilities to help offset what's going on at MacDill Air Force Base with the constraints of property and needs that they have there, to be able to bring those type of industries here and put them at our airport. So when I looked at our access management, it wasn't from the lens of a transportation funded appropriation. It's from an economic development. This is our opportunity to change our demographics, to have high wage paying jobs, to have industry that's coming here and paying taxes that's going to help offset and bring jobs and bring a different class of people into our community. Helps, float the boat, as they say, the tides rise and it floats all boats. So I looked at it from that. I also looked at the Cardinal corridor study in the same vein. The state has put a tremendous amount of money into our county by putting the Suncoast Parkway through here. I picked the Cardinal corridor because we are already gone through the process of creating an interchange management area. We know that that is posed for great economic impact. You're going to have commercial industry that's going to come around that. We hear often, like in the same committee, it's Barbara Sharif from down south in Miami. Her and I served together as county commissioners previously. Every time you open up the page in South Florida, you're talking about transportation and being reactive as to being proactive. And what I'm asking our board to do is look at the lens of being proactive. We don't want to end up like counties to the south of us. We don't want to have to get into a position where we have to redevelop and change what we're doing because we didn't foresee the future. This is looking at the future. This is where we have designed, with the help of the state, for economic development to happen. And so that's the reason I put it on here. We have a whole list of these corridor studies that we put out there. The county has already funded 491. We know the next hurdle to come up with that is to match 50% of that funding to get it into the realm of how we're going to get it widened. And that's going to be a heavy lift. And all of that being said, we're talking today about our legislative priorities. But as we enter into this new year in January and we start to have some workshops and some strategic planning, we have to decide as a community or as a board for our community, what's our benchmark, what is our goals, where are we going, and how are we going to generate the revenue, and how are we going to plan 50 years out? Because none of us are going to stand in the shade of the tree that we plant. It's just a fact. I never dreamed that I would ever see the Suncoast Parkway be where it's at today when I first started working on it in 2010, and I'm pleased. But that came because we had a governor that sought the need and was bold enough to say, you're going to make it happen. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. And I don't know if it would have happened if we hadn't have had COVID. Who knows? But we're here, it's happening. And we also know that the influences around us, we look at what's going on in Marion County. We look at the congestion on 75 between the Turnpike and Gainesville. We look at the villages and how they're exploding. Hernando County, all of these areas around us have an influence on what happens here in Citrus County. So when I look at these, I look at things for return on investment. It's a return on investment not only in the project itself, but it's a return on investment to our community members. It gives them an opportunity for hope, for a better job, for a better life, a better future. And it helps elevate what's going to happen with our kids. We're going to need a workforce of tomorrow. And if we don't get a grip with our kids today, we won't have a workforce for tomorrow. It's not just a county problem, it's a statewide problem. And we're really focused on it in different areas, but this is my wish list because I think it checks the boxes. I think it has a return on investment. I think it's something that the state's already invested in, and I think it has great returns on many areas of our community. So that's why I picked these two. The fire station is another one that I have supported from the beginning. The fire station, when I first looked at it, being in the insurance industry, I knew that all of our folks that lived out in the Inverness Country Club area, they were what they considered on the ISO ratings 9s and 10s. There was very few companies that wanted them. And if they could get the insurance, it was very expensive. And what I heard a lot was people were going bare. They were older generation, houses were paid off, couldn't really afford it. I'm not gonna buy it. I'm just gonna take my chances. We don't want that. That's not only an issue for them, it's a public safety issue because we don't want injuries to come to neighbors around that. The relocation of this fire station picks up 20,000 residents. and it also reduces the ISO rating, and it gets people where we need to go in the industry. So I'm a huge supporter of this because I think it's a growing need that we have, and it also ties in with the airport, the industrial park, and what we're going to need to support marketing efforts as that grows. So for me, I'm not against any of them, but I think the Cardinal Street corridor, considering the investment that's there, that the state's already made, we've already gone through the IMA process. We've had developers come in wanting to develop there, and I think it's just, for me, it's a high priority, and I think the Inverness Airport's a high priority. So if me personally, if I was ranking them, I would have to go back to the access management for the Inverness Airport as number 1. I would probably put the fire station at number 2. I'd put Cardinal at 3. And I would put the barge canal at 4 and the Halls River Path at 5.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I would agree with much of what you said. I agree 100% with what you said on these two priorities. My only, I guess the only point where we would separate on this is the avenue of funding for it. I would like to see the first one, the Inverness Airport Industrial Park, the 41 improvements there. I would like to see us go through Department of Economic Opportunity to seek a grant for that. And the corridor study, the Cardinal Street corridor study, I'd like to see us take this to the MPO and see if there's a funding avenue that we can go through the MPO on for doing this. I know for a fact that one year the MPO funded Hernando County's transportation impact fee study. I know that happened because I came back and asked, how come we're paying for our own and they're taking it through the MPO? So again, I'm not opposed to it. I'd like to see if we can go that route with it, to see if there's an easier avenue to getting that study funded. So only difference in listening to what you had to say.
Sarah, could you help walk us through, if you were going to go through this committee on transportation and economic development, if we were going to go for economic development funding specifically for this, I don't want to go the transportation route. I don't want to step in the way and try to redesign. If you take money, if we get it transportation, it just takes away from somebody else and another project somewhere else. So walk us through how it happens on an economic development appropriations request.
Sure. So economic development, the governor and the legislature have invested very heavily in the Jobs Growth Grant Fund. The governor feels very passionately about that program. It has, certainly over the past several years, while it's been in existence, funded some really important projects, a lot very similar to the Inverness Business Airport Industrial Park project. And so that's kind of right up the alley of that program. The legislature certainly can fund economic development projects as well. So Senator DeSigley, who you talked about, and we don't know exactly who the chair of the transportation appropriations, the representative may know, but I do not personally yet, in the House is going to be. So, certainly there's a possibility to do that, but, it is right up the alley of the Job Growth Grant Fund.
So by putting this on the list for economic development, it would put it into the grant?
There is a process through Department of Commerce that local governments would apply for those grants, and then they go through, evaluate based on criteria, and there's a queue that occurs. So there are several projects that are probably, going to be funded this year through that program, but the worthy and really good projects will get in the queue and be funded at a later date, I believe.
So I'm still confused. If we put this in under an appropriation up for, under economic development, would I put it in under the economic development appropriation, or would I apply through the jobs growth grant?
That's a
both?
choice, or you could do both, yes. So there, the governor likes the job growth grant fund, and he has a little bit more control over that program as well. Certainly, you can take a two-pronged approach and pursue a legislative appropriation at the same time as pursuing a grant, but they're two separate processes. And so I think we would look to the wisdom of your delegation, the wisdom of committee chairs to determine whether that's a viable option for the legislative appropriation state budget process. But I think we ought to go for both at this point and then pivot, when we know more information.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Finnegan, you look like you have something on your mind.
I have a lot on my mind. I do like the idea of then making it go for the grant. I feel like we did this last year. All fantastic ideas, all things that I want, every single one of them. But again, in my opening statement, we need to be laser focused and we have to start finishing projects. We can't keep asking for money, having little bits of money, and then not finishing a project, because that makes us look really bad as a community. So if it's new projects and we can start out as a grant first, so what if we asked for the things that we've had funded, and these new things that you brought up, just do the grant avenue, hopefully get the grant, and then as we're finishing the projects that we got funded, the next year, if there's more grant money, fine, put it back into the grant if it's not fully funded, or start asking for appropriation after that because we've already had money. I do think with the airport, there's so much money that's been invested in it. I feel that from a state perspective, we could get more if we actually saw business there. If we could actually get it, businesses in there, and it could be a boon for the economic part of our economy in Citrus County. I think that's it makes us look, or puts us in a better position to get more money. But I think they're all good ideas. It's just if we come at the end and then have a bunch like we did last year, we're just gonna get slashed left and right. The fire station, I didn't mention it earlier, but it was on the list of 3, and I think that 3 is manageable. There's a lot of other things that I want. I want $30 million for water. Ken She could spend that really well. He's nodding his head. Yes, thank you, Diana. Which I'll go ahead and bring it up. I didn't know if now was the time, but I wanted to ask because I know, Madam Chair, at the end of all this, you'll go before our delegation. It's so wonderful to see Representative Grow here now. But I was hoping, even if I went separately, I'm very passionate about water, and I want to address that as a state level, and I'm glad the representative's here to see that. And maybe Commissioner Kennard, I love the idea, because as small business starting out, we've done that and paid rent. I don't think small businesses should pay rent or sales tax on their rent. That's ridiculous. So maybe you would want to bring that up too on a state level. But recently, we were afforded money for a water reclamation project, you all know, for Sugar Mill Woods. And that made me very curious. I was a new commissioner when all that was coming down. And I know we talk about funding and getting grants for septic to sewer, which is wonderful. And we talk about the water quality and it helps our springs. And I love all of that. But we need to bring that full circle, because not only is that beneficial to our outstanding Florida waterways, but that sewer that comes in can now be treated and used for water reclamation projects. And I think for Citrus County, we're starting this, but it should be a state priority if our legislative delegation would want to pick that up, because when you reclaim that water, not only can you put it on golf courses, but the more sewer we have, the more water we can reclaim, and then it can water everywhere. So we hear about the water police all the time, and then Swift Mud, we only have a day, but then the HOAs fine people because they can't water and the grass looks bad, and they over fertilize because there's not enough water.
we could stop a lot of that if we could build into that water reclamation. So the first step with that would be as many septic to sewer projects as we can get, and then start asking for money for water reclamation and start building into these systems. It's important not only for Citrus County, but the entire state of Florida. You go anywhere in the state and it's like all these people moving in and people are concerned about water. What about our fresh water? So I would like to preserve as much fresh water as we can for the entire state of Florida. And with the board's permission, Madam Chair, I know you'll be talking about our appropriations and the things that we talked about. I would separately like to talk about this later. I didn't know what's appropriate, still haven't been to many of these in my tenure here, but I would like us as a board to have consensus for as many grants or any funding opportunities outside of the appropriations possible. And then further, I would like to ask our representative and our senator and whoever else I can find when I'm in Tallahassee, please put more money into this, make this a state issue. Let's look forward to getting more money into these programs in the future for our future generations.
Well, I can tell you this is at a high priority for our incoming, our Senate President now, Albritton. He is laser focused on water issues. I've read some really good commentary, what he wants to do with water. You're right on target. I think we are probably getting some of the most money out of Tallahassee for water that I know of. I would venture to guess that. I don't know that for a fact. I love everything you say, but I think just as important as this development goes, we should really do more planning for master regional drainage. As opposed to having all these independent DRAs, we need to have master drainage. Because really the end result where I think we want to get to is we want purple pipe. So as industries come in and they can use reclaimed water, we want to be able to supply certain industries if they need that water as a pumping potable water. We want to be able to give them the reclaimed water. So that's my goal. Is I want to get to the point where we got purple pipe. As far as watering lawns and part of what goes on in Sugar Mill Woods, I get a little frustrated that you have public water, but you can drill a private well for irrigation, but there's no monitoring that goes on private wells. It seems counterproductive to me. That's silly. But I don't know, and I don't know if we want to have Ken Sheet come up. Ken, I don't know, do you have any suggestions or ideas or thoughts, outside of what we're already doing for water? I know every time I've had a conversation with you, you've told me you're at capacity for projects. Like we have the money and it's just a matter of being able to facilitate getting the job done.
Can I say 3 words first?
Sure.
Boulder Industrial Park.
Yep.
For reclaimed water. That would.
We don't, problem is, as I understand it, we sit in the middle. There's another utility company that's probably going to produce most of where in that whole area of Black Diamond, Pine Ridge, all of Beverly Hills. That's another utility company that we're not involved with. And that's where all of that reclaimed would come from. Now, whether they can produce that or they have to come in and ask us to do bulk and then, we've talked about it many times. I'm not sure where that's going to land and fall, but it's a heavy lift.
Sure. So I'll give you my areas of concern. We're doing pretty good on the septic to sewer side. The issue that we have is being able to expand our plants to keep up with that. So we've got capacity at the Meadowcrest plant now, but we are lacking capacity at Brentwood. That's a plant that we need to expand. We're probably talking about a $30 or $40 million project to do that. We are not funded for that. On the water side, I'll be bringing to you the combined permit very soon. It's about $250,000 for us to get that process going. That's a short-term fix. Long-term fix, we are going to need a new water plant in the Citrus Springs area. That's probably on the $20 to $25 million ask, and we don't have any money for that. So we're not really funded for those big projects. We are doing very well with the septic to sewer. I was just looking this morning with my staff at the septic to sewer report and where we're gonna go next. We're doing very well in Homosassa. We'll be starting those projects very soon, hopefully first quarter of this coming year. 3 phases of sewer in Homosassa, but we're looking for the next projects up in the Citrus Springs area. Not sure which one. There's kind of 3 at the top of the list, and we'll decide and bring that to you to go forward with the grant request for that. The issue that I have with the grant funding process, it's one that, when you talk about legislative priorities, it might be one we want to talk about. It's a competitive process. We're never sure if we're going to get funded. It's very hard to put a CIP together not knowing if you're going to have money. We know what our needs are. We've done the report for that. But what we don't know is when the money's going to be here and when we can do projects. So it'd be nice if we had money assigned to us within that BMAP area so that we would know how much money we had. Give me that, I can put together a 5-year plan very easily of where we're going with these projects. So the competitive process, we're not as competitive sometimes. If you think about our residential areas, we have larger lots. So our septic tanks are spaced further apart. So the cost per septic tank is higher for us to do septic to sewer projects. It makes us less competitive with areas that have smaller lots. And if you think about a lot of the neighborhoods we go into, they're not fully developed. So we have vacant lots. We know they can put septic tanks on them. But when you look at it on a per pound of nitrogen basis, because those lots are vacant, we don't compare as well. So on the competitive basis, we do very well in Homosassa. We got a multi-year funding plan in place for that project, that area. But when you look at other areas in the county, we're not as competitive. So I'm a little concerned about us moving forward with some of those areas because of that. So I'd like to see the legislature say, okay, Crystal River, BMAP, you've identified the need, you know how much money it is, you get $5 million a year, figure out how you're gonna spend it. Rather than, we might do a project there if we know we got the money, or we might not, so. 2 things, plan expansions, competitive nature of the septic to sewer projects. As far as the reclaimed water, I know I skipped that a little bit. We're upgrading all of our plants to produce reclaimed water. Our emphasis so far has been to go to golf courses. I know there are industrial entities that would like to have reclaimed water. I've had that request. Holder in particular, if we were gonna get there. The problem is we're so far away from that. And we already have the reclaimed water that we're producing now kind of spoken for. So I think in the future, we can go in that direction. I'm not a huge fan of residential septic to sewer or reclaimed water just because it's way more expensive. You have to tear up every neighborhood again to put pipe in there. So, the cheapest and best way to get into the reclaimed water business and to get the biggest offset is to go to some of those bigger users like golf courses. So that's been our emphasis so far. The day may come when we produce enough, but we're just not there yet.
So if you had a wish list, and I know we don't have anything in this legislative priority, and I'll jump back to Sarah here in a minute, but it's my understanding, particularly I think it's starting this year and going forward, there's going to be lots of money coming out of the tribal dollars that's going to be specifically designated to water projects. And I think it kind of ties into what we're talking about, and I don't know if it would be appropriate, because I don't know if you've done enough or have enough information to give to us, if we were gonna say, we wanna start a process of $5 million a year to get where we need to go for whatever.
Well, we did the full, and DEP funded us for a plan, basically a septic to sewer plan countywide. So we have that report in hand. We know how much the total amount is to get us, the BMAP requires us to mitigate to a certain degree. And that plan was basically to tell us what we have to do to get to that mitigation requirement. How many septic tanks, how much agricultural changes do we need to make? So the report deals with all that. It was specific to septic to sewer, but it tells us how many septic tanks we have to remove on a yearly basis to meet the milestones, to meet the BMAP. And we just reported on it. We're probably ahead of most communities, like you guys said earlier. We're still not probably moving as fast as we need to keep up with the BMAP requirements. So I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it was a very big number to do the county to the point within a 20-year period where we would meet the BMAP.
So for the sake of argument, before we get down that track, I would say, and then we'll get Sarah's input, if we were going to ask and say, we're gonna put away $5 million, ask for $5 million a year as, to get us on track with our BMAP requirements, I don't know if that's an appropriate ask, how to work that in, but is that something that you would be?
Yeah, I did 5 million, I threw that off the top of my head. My thought was, if the legislature knew how much money they were gonna put in for septic to sewer, statewide, and we knew what our percentage of that ask would be for, say, Crystal River Kings Bay, then whatever they put in every year, we get that percentage assigned to us to do a CIP project, and we program those CIP projects in, and we do them as soon as the money's available. So we would be able to prioritize our projects based on what we've already done, the work we've already done, and then we just put that money in the bank till we have enough, and we do the next one, and the state can know, like we know, well, we're going right down the list like this. And they could look at our BMAP, then our reporting on the BMAP would be easy. You know, here's where we are, you already know where we are because you've been funding these things, and it would be a much simpler process for the state to track things too. So if we knew how much money they were putting in, and they don't put the same amount in every year, but if we knew what percentage of the total statewide requirement was within these BMAP areas, and what our percentage would be for our 2 BMAPs, then we just put our projects in one after the other into the CIP and fund them as the state puts that money aside.
Madam Chair.
And we don't have to go through the whole process of putting this thing together and going before SwiftMud's board and everybody else and with everybody else's projects and trying to figure out whether we're gonna get the priority to get our project in. And again, I don't wanna get on the soapbox up here because you guys know I will, but you know, wastewater plant expansion projects tend to rank very high because you reduce a lot of nitrogen when you do one of those. So all the money was going in that direction. I don't think that was ever the intent. And I told them, well, give me the customers in septic to sewer, and as long as I'm charging my connection fees properly, I'll have some money to do those projects. And we would look at other funding sources rather than septic to sewer money to fund our wastewater plant. In fact, we've got Mead and Hunt now looking at potential funding for those projects I was talking about, both the wastewater and the water projects, outside of septic to sewer money. But other agencies have gone in and said, we need to upgrade our wastewater plant, and taken a $20 million project off of the septic to sewer funding because they rank so high because of the nitrogen removal, so.
Oh, gotcha. Commissioner Davis?
Nice soapbox on government efficiency, though. Appreciate that.
And thanks for the comment on the wells in Sugar Mill Woods, too.
I completely agree with the wells issue. That drives me batty, because I sat on that board for a couple of years. A little bit of a sidebar question on one of the themes is, of course, future thinking and not creating problems that future generations are going to have to fix. What can we do, or what are we doing with the new large developments that are going in? Can we not essentially, or should we not require that they lay purple pipe, even though it's not available yet? It will be, because like you said, you're tearing up neighborhoods. And I've heard that argument before, that when you're laying infrastructure, you lay what you're going to need in the future, even if it's 10 or 15 years out, right?
Yeah. I've got mixed thoughts on that, okay? So, yes, the pipe would be there when you need it. Unused pipe in the ground tends to, you know the issues we have with leaks for pipe that we're using and the maintenance we do on it.
Doesn't do well?
If you go in there and pressure test a pipe that's been in the ground for 10 years, I will wager it's gonna fail.
Okay.
So putting in it ahead of time without a plan for when if we knew we were gonna be there in 5 years, I'd say absolutely.
Okay.
Now, the new developments that are coming in, and I know you guys know there's some fairly big ones coming in, they will have water and sewer. Those communities are not possible without that. So, you know, we're not creating more of the same problem with the new developments that are coming in, at least.
Most of it, yeah. Reclaimed water would be sort of icing on the cake, so to speak.
Yeah, like I said, we've got a lot of areas that want reclaimed water that we can't even get to now. So, you know, expanding the reclaimed water system without the amount of water that we need to serve them, I think we need to take smaller steps with that, honestly.
Okay. And Madam Chair, while I have the floor, I didn't comment on this earlier, but yes, all 5 of the projects that we're talking about, I'm absolutely in favor of, but anything that we can do to seek elsewhere, as other commissioners have stated, is absolutely, I think, what we should do just to hopefully have more of the 5 be successful. And is there not a case to be made on the fire station? I know it's replacing a fire station, but is there not any sort of case to be made for some impact fees to go towards that? Because I have a little bit of a concern on some of these projects. We have no skin in the game.
Well, absolutely. You do have the ability to do some local funding on this project. You hit the nail on the head. You do have about 1.5 million that you could tap into in fire impact fees.
Okay.
You pretty much offset that cost in half. That'd be a great local match.
Even though we're closing a fire station to open this one?
That's right. It would still be applicable.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Commissioner Finnegan.
The industries that want the reclaimed water, with our current subject to sewer projects going through, like how far away are we from accomplishing reclaimed water to industry?
So, as you know, at the Meadowcrest plant, right now it's a $2 million gallon plant operating at about half capacity, 1 million gallons. Right now, the Black Diamond Golf Course is taking all of that. I think we're probably reaching their limit before too long. So we will probably need to look at another place to take that water. At one time, we were looking at taking it up to Duke and combining with the city's project up there. Thankfully, we did not do that because they cut back their use. But we are gonna have to find another use for that water before too long. The Sugar Woods plant, you know, produces very high quality reclaimed water. That we will be under construction next year with the project to take that to the golf courses in Sugar Woods. And they will be able to take all that water for the fairly foreseeable future. That's a 1.5 million gallon plant operating at about half capacity also. The plant that we're upgrading right now, we're under construction upgrading Brentwood right now. It's only a 500,000 gallon a day plant, but we're upgrading that because we had to for the BMAP. That reclaimed water, we've already had discussions, and like I said, it's a 500,000 gallon plant running at about 90% capacity. So we are gonna have to expand the plant soon, but that reclaimed water, we've already had conversations with Citrus Hills, and they want all of it. And they'll use all of that, and they could probably use it through the next plant expansion for all of their common areas, golf courses, everything else. So there's not a lot of excess right now. Now, and where the excess is at Meadowcrest is not easily accessible to the areas where we're looking at industrial to be able to supply it. So it would take a lot of money and a lot of pipe. You're talking about going halfway across the county. Now, I can see a benefit right now. All 3 of those systems are completely isolated. I can see a benefit to a combined reclaimed water system as our system grows. I can see, you know, us interconnecting those and having a combined system, but we're just not there yet. So we were looking for, obviously, the biggest user, the closest proximity to the wastewater plant, because that is the cheapest way to get into the business. And I haven't talked to any of them that didn't say, how fast can you get here? Which is good too, to have a customer that wants what you're producing. To get to one of those industrial sites, it's possible. It's just, you know, money.
Money. Well, I want to thank you and thank Madam Chair for allowing you to come up, because it's so special to have our representative here and to hear it from you, the expert. I think is very valuable, not only to us, but to the state of Florida.
Can I make one more comment, because I know this is near and dear to your heart too. One of the issues we have with the septic to sewer projects when we go into communities is the cost that that the residents have to bear. We do a very good job of buying those projects down. On average, the cost per house is about $35,000, and we buy them down to between $5,000 and $6,000 for the assessment. But that doesn't include connection fees, plumbing costs, decommissioning their existing system. So the real cost to property owners is probably in the $10,000 range. Typically, they like to fund up to like 75% on the infrastructure side. I think when you consider all those costs, a higher percentage would be very nice and make it much easier for us to sell these projects to the community when we do them. They had a program, a one-year program to provide money for those plumbing and decommissioning costs. I can tell you the communities we went into with that money, it really changed the attitude of the people we were talking to. So I'm not sure why they discontinued that. And maybe the goal here is to include those costs in our ask going forward. But the more they can help us to buy down those costs, the easier it is for us to go into these communities and get it done. You know, if you tell somebody, you know, we're gonna bring sewer into your neighborhood and it's gonna cost you 10 grand, you know, they bring out the pitchforks and the rotten tomatoes. If you go in there and tell them, we're gonna bring sewer into your community, it's gonna cost you nothing, then we don't get a whole lot of pushback. So, you know, some balance there, you know, we've tried to balance those costs. I can tell you the magic number probably on the assessment side was in the $5,000 level, but when you add in those other costs, that's what starts to, you know, turn the tide. So anything we can do to increase the percentage that we get in grant money to buy down the cost of the property owners would be great.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I know we've had a lot of conversations. I did talk to Representative Mazzullo about it, have not yet had an opportunity, but I will, to talk to Representative Grow. And it's not just affecting Homosassa. Cambridge Greens is.
Oh, that would be my district.
Yes, so even, in that, I used Cambridge Greens, even fighting for them, because Tallahassee thinks that when you go into a community that people may pay between $4,000 and $5,000, and that's not true. They're paying between $10,000 and $12,000, and it's unbearable. And people think in Homosassa, which we've had to change the perception, it's people living on the water, who cares, they can afford it. It's not people living, I mean, it is some, but it's the little widows living in the mobile homes and in old Homosassa that's not on the water, but they're getting the project, and the cost is unbearable for them. And you're right, you did have, for different reasons, an area where the cost was almost nothing and people welcomed it and they loved it. But when you go in, and then if people have multiple properties and it's $10,000 or $12,000, they don't want it. And then they come before us and they speak out against it and say how terrible it is. But the projects are good, and they're good for us, and they're good for the state of Florida. So we need to make those more affordable. And I've had conversations with Ken, several. We have to get the costs down. We have to get it capped. And I will work the Tallahassee end of it, because I would like these projects to spread throughout our community.
Ken, while we have you up here, can you walk us through where we are on 19 if we were moving forward with the Barge Canal project, getting utilities up there?
Sure. So we're as far north with sewer when we complete the project, which will be done first quarter of next year also, as the hospital on the sewer side. And we're as far as the railroad tracks on the water side. So we went a little bit further with the water. It's about another 5 miles, I think, to get up to the Barge Canal boat ramp site. I did some rough numbers a little while back just to, if we're gonna start asking for money for that, you know, what's our ask need to be? On the water side, to get to the Barge Canal, I think we're in the $5.5 to $6 million range. On the sewer side, it's more like $8.5 million. So total, about $14 million to get water and sewer to the Barge Canal. If we're gonna go the rest of the way up to the river, I know there's been some discussion about serving the wider Yankeetown, Inglis area, be about another $1.5 million combined to get the water and sewer up to the river. So all told, somewhere in the $15, $16 million range to get the entire corridor along US 19. Now, what has changed to make that more viable, at one point in time, we had been told by DOT that crossing the bridge was gonna be a problem. We have since thankfully gotten much more favorable indication from DOT that we can actually put our utilities on the bridge. That's by far the cheapest way to get there. So that was good news, and that's why I think it's kind of revitalized the idea that we might want to work that way. But it's still those numbers are very close to the numbers for recent projects. So still a pretty big number to get up there.
Madam Chair? Just a couple comments. At some point, when we are ready to take reclaimed water to industrial sites in the county, sites, the board had set aside several $1,000,000 for economic development out of one of the pots of money from COVID funds that we received. I don't know what is left in that fund still at this point, but I would think something like that would be a good pot of money to look to for local funding, to at least get us started getting reclaimed water to one of those industrial sites. As far as taking utilities up to the Barge Canal boat ramp, it's a great idea. I would love to see us do that. I don't think I know that there is at least one RV park up there that would love to have a seat at the table and contribute substantially to the cost of getting utilities up there. They run a package plan up there, is that right? That
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
that is just
there's a package
varying.
plan on either side of the Barge Canal. All of those package plans are falling under the BMAP requirements too. So countywide, we're getting a lot of interest in getting connected. You guys know we've done several of those type of projects. I'm sure if we were headed in that direction, they would definitely be interested. I haven't had direct conversations with them.
I went up and met with them. They're very interested in talking sooner rather than later. And the last comment on that would be that I've also sat with the folks up in Inglis when there was talk of them trying to do their own sewage treatment plant and collection system. I don't think that's going anywhere. I don't know. It's been some time since I've met with them. But it seemed like an awful lot of pie in the sky, if you will. But I would support servicing them from a sewer system. I would not support taking water across the county line.
What would be the time frame if you had the money today? What would that schedule look like?
Under construction, if we had the money today and I didn't have to go through the grant process, it's probably a 2-year process to get to construction once the money's available. And probably a 12-month construction project, maybe 18 months. So if we had the money today, we could probably have sewer up there 3.5 years.
A big player in this game. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I love the conversation. I think a big player in this game is the Coast Guard building up there. Department of Defense has a very large bank account, and they could contribute significantly to getting sewer up there across the Barge Canal to their new site.
Thank you. All right, Miss Sarah. So you heard this great dialogue. If we were going to, what would be your recommendation on this project? If it's gonna take us $14–15 million to get to a project across the Barge Canal where the Coast Guard's going to participate and have the benefit of that, what would be your recommendation if we were going to add that into our priorities?
Yeah, I'm certainly not an expert on, what it takes to get, and, obviously you have experts here. But if we were gonna add that, I would absolutely, say we take a dual approach on this one and apply for a grant from the state, and then from DEP, and then also consider asking for a legislative appropriation. You did make a really good point earlier that we're gonna start seeing additional funds from the Seminole tribe, from the revenue that's been coming in and the expansion of gaming that they have received. And the legislature has indicated a desire to funnel all of those revenues to environmental projects in the state. We haven't quite seen the water quality grant program funded at that level, at a high level. There was somewhere south of $200 million funded into it this past, the current fiscal year that we're in. We hope that more will go into that program and through the DEP grant program, evaluation program, in the next fiscal year. So I think that's a great place to go for water quality projects.
So board members, I guess kind of what I'm hearing here, as far as the barge canal goes, to get utilities there, if we had funding for it today, it would take 3.5 years to get us across the finish line. What I would like to suggest is if James and Sarah could work together to try to come up with a platform on an ask, and I don't know what that means. I mean, you guys need to sit down and figure that out. I don't know if it's partial funding or we go for partial funding and a grant application, or if we go for broke, whatever we do. But I'd like to get us started, and for an ask. However, Commissioner Kennard, you can't have it all. If it's going to take us 3.5 years, if we had all of this funding in place and to get started on that project, then I would like to change the priority of the barge canal and the ranking, not take it off the list, but to move it down, just to put it into perspective, how we move the needle. All my time, 14 years going to Tallahassee, it's always been said to me, what is your skin in the game? You know, what are you doing to help yourself? You know, how much have you set aside? I think over the last couple of years, we've done a really good job. I mean, we're starting to set aside money now out of our budget for grant matches and do other things. As far as the business airport, the Inverness Airport Business Park, we're getting ready to break ground on phase 2. I think this is skin in the game. I think you know, we have to have this access. It'll help facilitate getting us to where we need to go to entice businesses to come there. Without that, it makes it a harder sell. And for that reason, I would like to see us really focus on this Inverness Business Park, because I think it's gonna add the jobs, and it gives hope, you know, for taking people out of generational poverty, giving them a job and giving them an opportunity. And I think it's a regional project. I think it helps. It clicks a lot of boxes. It's government owned. Florida has, is it called Space Florida? They can come in, they can load, I mean, since it's government-owned property, they can actually facilitate doing things on this property. I think this has a lot of merit, and I think it helps build our budget as we enter into each budget in a different way. Jobs, revenue, tax revenue. I think it does a lot. I just, to me, this is very important, because I do think that is skin in the game. I think it's doing everything that the legislature wants. We're a rural community. It's adding jobs. It's helping displace some of the Department of Defense congestion in other areas. So I like this project. I would like to rank it number 1, and I will take input from there.
Madam Chair? I disagree. It's not that I don't think that's an important project. But your board years ago spent gas tax dollars building a road down to this new boat ramp that doesn't exist. We have tasked our federal lobbyist with getting the permits for this boat ramp. We've been to the legislature once with this. This has been talked about for many, many years. I hate to see us shuffle the deck in our priorities each year. Commissioner Finnegan suggested that that we finish the projects that have been partially funded. We have set aside BP or restore money for this project ever since I got on the board back in 16. It's a project that we need to get across the line. I like the idea. I really like the idea of getting utilities up there, but we're too early in the process to even ask for that yet. You know, Ken was doing sort of back of the napkin math at the podium to come up with a number. We're not ready for that. We're not ready to make that ask yet. We don't know yet for sure that the Coast Guard would participate. We don't know how interested the city of Inglis or Levy County would be in participating. We know the campgrounds up there, or the mobile home parks, would be very interested, but we don't know at what level. So there's a lot that we don't know about that project yet. Maybe it's ready for greater board discussion and an ask next year or the year after, because then we've got real numbers on how much we need to ask for. The access management on 41, the county commission hasn't even had a discussion about that yet. We talked last year, we brought Watson Road up into the priorities. I think too late in the process, but nonetheless, we brought that up there. Making improvements along 41, the board hasn't even talked about that yet. I personally think something that hasn't been talked about here today, that we need to be talking about a regional evacuation shelter, a regional shelter or a regional project that could serve as a longer-term shelter if and when the Nature Coast is hit by that big storm. But it's not ready for an ask yet. It's not ready to take to the legislature yet because there's been no design, there's been no board. You know, I have no idea where the board's at on it other than what I read in the paper. So I think that these are all, those things are good projects, but they're not matured to the point yet to go to the legislature and ask. We started this by talking about how focused we need to be on some small projects, on how the legislature's tightening their belt. We need to drill down and go to the legislature with projects that are ready for a specific ask, and how do they benefit not just our community but regionally. And we've got definitely one project that does that. I would hate to see that project slip down on the list at all. We've got the Halls River Road multi-purpose path. That's partially funded. That's one that, is it a regional project? I don't know that it's a regional project, but it is partially funded. We can find some local skin to put in that game as well, but we've got to get some of these projects wrapped up. When I would, before we started this 491 widening project, every single year that I was up in Tallahassee talking with Representative Masulo, after we got the funding, he'd say, "What are you guys doing with the 491 money?" It's sitting. And I'd get the same question the very next year. You guys are asking for more money for different projects. What are you doing with the money we gave you here? And I would like to see us get those two projects off the table before we start bringing new projects up. Now, if we want to take the access management on 491 and go the grant avenue for economic development, I'd be fine with that, but I don't want to see us start shuffling the deck on our legislative priorities.
Madam Chair, I had a much simpler question. We already blew by the federal aspect of our agenda. How do we work with the Coast Guard? Would it be through the federal lobbyists to help us fund everything we want to do at the boat ramp.
James?
I think in terms of the water infrastructure that you're referring to, the DoD has a pretty sizable infrastructure pot that they set aside for these types of projects. I think it's worth broaching that conversation with them. I don't think the ask is quite there yet necessarily. I think it's a great future initiative. I think we start engaging in that dialogue with the Coast Guard now and prepare in advance.
I'm referring to not just the infrastructure of water and sewer, but also even the boat ramp itself. Is there any ask to be made on
I think
any
it
of the
merits a
infrastructure there?
conversation. I think it's certainly worth, working with our congressional office. We could approach DoD about potential opportunities there. Certainly, we could explore that.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
In speaking with the landowner that sold the property to the Coast Guard had, at the time, doesn't mean that they haven't changed their mind, but they had zero interest in sharing our ramp with us, or even any of the stormwater retention area. They got their piece of property, and they really weren't interested in a cooperative effort. Now, where I think we can cover some ground is on the utilities. Certainly, they need water, and sewer would help their operation up there. But I think they're building, my understanding is from talking to him, that they're building their own ramp, they're building a standalone facility. They initially, in the property negotiations, they had some serious concerns with even any type of cross-access through a security gate, things like that, because either they didn't want to come across the boat ramp property, or they were reluctant about sharing some type of fencing or anything like that between the two properties.
Purely understandable,
Yeah.
absolutely. But the drainage and things like that, seems like they should be able to play ball a little bit on that to benefit both parties, anything that's not a security risk.
Yeah.
And obviously, professionals don't want to share boat ramps with amateurs.
Right. Great point.
To clarify something that Commissioner Kennard said about finding money, the Halls River, we do have $1 million that's been set aside carrying over for years, so that's our skin in the game. So the barge canal, we have skin in the game. The path, we have skin in the game. And it sounds like through impact fees, the fire station, we have skin in the game too, and those were our three asks. I think that we should move forward with the industrial park and go ahead and ask for a grant under that economic pot of money, since that's supposed to be a larger pot. I think we should get started in that direction, absolutely. And then if we could get started on the Cardinal Lane study through a grant process too, that would just be my 2 cents to not kick those down the road, to get started, but in a different way. Finish the projects we have, and then see where we are with the funding for the 2 new ones that we're talking about today, and then maybe those get moved over to an appropriations request in a different year, maybe next year. I don't know. We'll have to see how it all shakes out.
Do you have anything?
Well, I've been sitting here listening, trying to, write little notes. I agree the barge canal finally needs to get moved forward, not backwards, not sit on our hands, okay? It's taken this long. We've gotten money. We've still got more money coming in, from the Restore. We need to get that moved forward. And when we get that moved forward, we also need to do the septic to sewer, because we need to bring that up there so that we have a completed project, not a half thing.
Easy.
I know. You notice I changed it to thing.
I didn't want you to get ahead of your skis,
But the
Commissioner.
thing is, we need to, if it takes 2 sections, we need to bring both of them together and get it done. Okay, 491 has been sitting with 1 mile for, okay, so now that is a bottleneck. 19 has been sitting and getting fixed and getting fixed and getting fixed. 41, we have 3 north to south roads being worked on at the same time. Somebody was not smart, okay? But we see the canal, we've seen it for years. Okay, granted, the state didn't want to make it the whole canal all the way across like it was going to do in the 60s. But the commission and commissioners in the past saw it as a good project. They brought it forward. The Restore money saw it as a good project. The state saw it as a good project. We need to finish what was and is a good project. But the septic to sewer has to come along with it. Now, we do need to get Inverness Industrial Park moving in the right direction, which means the fire station needs to be built. If we need to use impact fees to show them that we have skin in the game, use whatever impact fees we could use to show them we've got skin in the game. And then when I look down the list, septic to sewer is still gonna get rid of our nitrogen. It's gonna reduce our nitrogen, right? And that's what Mr. Cheek said. Now, 491 is a benefit regionally, not just locally. And that's where, we need to get the plans back from the people and get it moving, okay? And it's gonna cost millions. And the longer we wait, the more it's gonna cost. The only one that I see that only benefits Citrus County that I would like is to make sure that the Small County Outreach Projects Program stays. And yes, that does only benefit the Citrus County residents, but we need something that benefits our residents. We've got to keep the SCOP program going because we as a county do not have enough funding coming in to complete everything on our own. And those are the 5 that I'd like to see come across the line. I do like your 2 recommendations for the 2 things, and I think we can maybe get some of that done in our budget, okay, as a county budget. But they are necessary, and I do see the necessity on both of them. So it's not that I don't want to put my eggs in a basket towards those, but I think we have some plans that have been vetted and stuff now, and we want to get it moved the right direction.
Well, I'm still going to respectfully disagree. It's not that I dislike the barge canal boat ramp project, but this was on the list. It has been on the list. I don't think that the state is going to look at it and go, I think this is a regional thing. I think and I don't see it doing that much for us from an economic development. It's so far north and on our county. There's no hotels up there. There's no restaurants. There's really nothing up there. Do I think we need it? I absolutely think we need it. But again, I think we're still so far out, having utilities, having all the things that we're going to need. Do I think there's an ask there? Yeah, but I think it's limited. I don't think it does anything to add to the bottom line of our budget year over year. When we talk about the Inverness Airport, that's a project that we started. It's been started since 2010. It's been on the books. And we finally started making progress over the last 2 years, and we're getting ready to start the second phase of it. And I do think that this is an opportunity to add revenue to our bottom line. I think it does something for our community and our budget. So, as a group, we have to decide, but when I look at it, I still think the legislature wants to look at something that has a regional impact. I think they want to know that it has a return on investment. And I think this Inverness Airport is the thing that best has a promised land component to it for us in Citrus County. And I think it helps do a lot of things, create jobs, helps with our budget, diversifying our revenue. And I just personally believe it's something that the legislature could potentially get behind. And the boat canal's a great thing, but I don't see them thinking that there's a return on investment to it at this point in time. But, James, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or Mr. Howard?
Other than we look forward to bringing this forward in January for formal adoption. We have a meeting scheduled. It's in the end of January, is it with our state legislators?
Yes, we have our state delegation meeting January 27th.
Yeah, so they're going to look forward to ensuring this board has adopted policies in advance of that. That's always a requirement. So we look forward to that. We'll have more input, feedback throughout the holidays, and I'm sure we can come up with different solutions. You mentioned earlier the jobs grant. That's a good example of the grant we just recently received for the Holder property. So that's really a kind of a nice tool in the toolbox. I know Commissioner Kennard talked about DOD. I've got a lot of experience in that area, working with Kings Bay Naval Base. So there's millions and millions of dollars there. So there's definitely, I think, some opportunity at some point. And having worked with the military, not being a military person, they have zero risk tolerance. So that's not unusual for them to not want to participate. We did a really large-scale gun range at one point, and they couldn't assume any they didn't want to participate because it's too much risk for them. So that's typically how they operate. But I think there are some wins. There's some federal programs they have, and I think you got to have the angle that we don't want them having septic out there and things like that. And sometimes there's some funding that can help go a long way with that. But I also think national security opportunities, because of this community, what we can do. I think there's a place we can play in that arena with Space Florida, as you indicated, because they're out of room in Tampa area and other things. I think there's some opportunities here for some high-paying jobs, I think, and that's a great way to go.
Representative Grow, is there anything that you would like to add?
Oh, hell yes.
All right, now we're getting into the real meat.
I was hoping you were going to call him up.
First of all, great job, Sarah. Sarah and I have met and we've talked, and we've known each other for a while, and we can welcome her home. For those of you that don't know, she grew up in Citrus County, so it's nice to have someone representing us that's lived here. Obviously, I'm here today just to observe and to listen. I'm not here to say this is good or this is bad. Whatever this group decides they want me to carry forward in Tallahassee, obviously I'm going to do that. But I would take what Sarah had to say about what the speaker has said and what the governor has said, take it to heart. You know, if you think about the state of Florida as, you know, a family, there's 67 kids in this family, and every one of them's got their hand up asking for something, new shoes, new pants, you know, vacation or whatever. So we have to be very careful what we ask for. And I will say the regional piece is good, but the other thing that Speaker Perez has said, and for those of you who haven't followed the numbers, and don't quote the exact numbers, but the ask for projects from members of the House and the Senate has gone from about 150 million in 2019 to 1.4 billion last session. And I can tell you, after looking at the economic reports for the state of Florida, we're not on the same growth path that we've been on for the last decade. Actually, we see it slowing down. And the economic report that just came out shows us still at a surplus next year. The next year, it's more like break even, and the next year, we're gonna have to find a way to cut some stuff in order to continue to deliver a balanced budget. So obviously, you know, my love for this community and for what each of you talk about in these projects, I mean, I enjoy the passion. You know, with a background in economics and business, you know, I do like the return on investment. I do like the idea that we're gonna create jobs. The one thing I will say there, and Commissioner Finnegan said it, if we could strike a deal with someone who says, if you do this at this airport, we're going to bring, I don't care if it's 100 jobs, whatever the number is, and we're going to build a facility here, and we're going to do business in Citrus County, that would sure make it easier for us to find the funding to finish that project. I'm not saying we have to have that. The other thing we talked about matching funds, when we talked through appropriations a couple of weeks ago, we had Legislative University. I went back to school to learn a lot, and there's a lot to learn. So I'm not making fun of that, but one of the things we talked about with appropriations is skin in the game, 100%. Now, that's not required, but I will tell you that everyone up there talks about it. So things like, you know, the new facility for the fire rescue. Let's put everything we can in there, what that land would cost. I mean, everything that we can add to, this is the match. You follow me? So it looks like, you know, we're putting, it doesn't look like, we are putting a lot into a project like that one. And any of the other projects where we can show that. One example for Commissioner Kennard is, you know, for the barge canal, Chad Johnson, who's a good friend of mine, House District 22, that's going to add benefit to Levy County too. So we need to get him advocating on behalf of that because it is regional. And any other projects that are regional, we need to talk about, okay, what's the region and who are the other members in the legislature that we can get advocating for those projects? Because I can tell you, not just me and not just Sarah and the other folks up there, but the more people we have in the legislature that are advocating on behalf of these projects, the better off we are. And I'll keep thinking about that as well. But I'm excited. I'm excited to go up for my first session. As you said, committee weeks start January 13th. We've got 2 weeks in January, 3 in February, and then we start session. I should hopefully know by the end of this week which committees I will be on. But even with that said, whichever committees I end up on, I can always go and speak at all the committees. I can also go and work all the other folks in the legislature to make sure we're pushing what we want to push. On top of appropriations, there's some bills that I'm going to introduce, which, you know, I'm excited about working. And, you know, we're just going to work hard. We're going to work hard on behalf of the people in Citrus County, and you guys said it well. Commissioner Barrett, you said it too, like Citrus County. What are we going to do for Citrus County? And that's the other thing I'll add before I wrap is Speaker Perez said, you know, what are we doing for the people, not for, you know, an individual group per se, but, and I'll say it like this, if we were going to spend $100,000 over here and it's going to help 50,000 people, or if we spend $100,000 over here and it's going to help 5,000 people, I can tell you where the speaker is going to want to spend the money. So we need to make sure that we're putting that message together so we can all carry that message forward to show that the money that we're asking for, and we're asking for it, it's not that we deserve it, we're asking for it. We need to make sure that we're telling the story on who it is going to help in our county and in our region. And that would be the thing that I would be looking to hear, right? From other people in other places who are looking for that money. Transportation, because all these things are dancing around in my head when all of us are trying to think about Christmas, right? I saw the transportation budget a week ago, and again, don't quote me on the exact number, but the state of Florida is spending close to $300 million in Citrus County in that 5-year work plan. And you can go down the list of all the big counties, and until you get to Broward and maybe Dade, no one else has that number right there. So for us to go in right now and start asking for more money, I think we need to get creative on how we do that when it comes to roads. So with that, I'm going to wrap. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Obviously, my door is open, and I speak with each of you individually as the need comes, as well as, and listen, to have this gentleman here is incredible. Part of my district's Marion County as well, and they've had this position in Marion County. Matt Creel holds that position, and it really is a big benefit. I think to be able to, you know, you've got the ask, but you also have to be able to, you know, it's like me asking my wife if I can go hunting for 3 days. I have to tell her why it's good for her. When we ask for something, you know, we have to tell why it's good for the people that live in this community. So again, I'm stoked, I'm excited to represent, and let's just keep the communications going. Thank you. Oh, by the way, this is Michael, he's my legislative aide. You can't get a hold of me, call him.
Welcome, Michael. All right, James. You
Well-
want to pull us in for a landing?
I'm going to try my best. So, Madam Chair, I would just ask that we get consensus on how to move forward with the appropriations items.
Well, in light of what we just heard from our legislator, I'm going to start with you, Commissioner Kennard. Why don't we start with your ranking first?
Let's see, let me get there.
Until you're all getting ready, I'm going to go down the line.
My suggestion would be that we keep the appropriations requests in the order that they are, these first three. We need to better complete the story, if you will, on each one of them, what the county is ready to do, or what the county has done already for local skin in the game on each one of them, what we're willing to do, how far down the road can we get with each one of these with local resources, and then how it benefits not only locally and regionally, but there needs to be an economic development component to this. We have talked, it's been talked about for years, long before I got here. In fact, when you were on the board first, about the possibility of locating a marina on the Barge Canal, additional economic developments up there. Those are things that need to be part of the sell. And I think those things can happen, not only with the Barge Canal boat ramp, but the multi-purpose path. There's no question our community's growing. The number of people up and down Halls River Road is forever increasing. There needs to be a safety component discussed about that, an economic development component, and then obviously fire rescue. It's if you throw out, just this line of, we need a new fire station out at the airport. Well, what does that mean? And what it means, the bigger picture is that is another box that is checked for companies to look at locating to the Inverness Airport Industrial Park. So we can't leave out those components to making the pitch, making the sell for getting these things funded. Now, the additional requests, the two additional requests, as I've said a couple times now, I'm in favor of both of them, but I think different avenues rather than going the legislative appropriations request. I think there needs to be a grant approach to improving transportation, the access management there into the industrial park. I think we score much better in that grant request going that route than we will trying to get additional monies out of the legislature and ultimately DOT. That is not something that I think the district would be in favor of us asking for. And as Representative Grow mentioned, they know very well how much we're getting compared to the typical formula they use for funding transportation projects in county. They know what we're getting compared to what we should be getting. So their eyes are on continuing 41. Their eyes are continuing the Suncoast Parkway, on the next phase of 19 on 44 East. So I think we have a better chance at getting the funding for the access management to the business park going the grant route. The other, the corridor study for Cardinal, I would really like the opportunity, I don't know if it goes anywhere, but I would really like the opportunity to take that to the MPO and see what avenue there is possibly there to getting the MPO to fund something like that. And their funding, as you're aware, is all 100% reimbursed by DOT once the MPO decides that that's a project that they're willing to take on, or a scope, I guess they call it. So that would be my take on it.
Commissioner Berry.
Well, like I've said previous, number one, the funding of the Barge Canal. You have to remember, Suncoast is coming. It's gonna be at 486 within a year, but they're also already started to do the next section, okay, which will get them all the way up by 19 in the canal. And when they get all the way up by there and the people get off, number one, we're gonna have economic development. Because we're gonna have gas stations built, we're gonna get restaurants built. So it is going to be an economic driver in the county, just like we've had the economic driver at 486, where we added Target and all those stores, and now we're also adding all the PUDs with the housing. The people are definitely coming, and with that, we have to anticipate the growth of this business area, which will be up by the Barge Canal. whether it's for people to use the barge canal or not, that's up to the people that use, that go out on the canal. I have seen over the years that, yeah, the barge canal is needed. Okay, we lost Fort Island with the storms. So where are people launching their boats? Okay, this would be another, reason that we need to push this to get something done. And yeah, it's gonna take time to do it. That's why I say we need to do that. We also need to do the septic to sewer at the same time, because we want to be ready, both directions, for this economic development. And yes, the economic development is also on the other side of the county in Inverness at the airport, which has been working and working and growing and growing. And hopefully we're gonna start getting a lot of people renting and getting stuff. But that does entail the fact we do need a firehouse. We do need the fire station, and we need to show that, we have put money in, even if, like you said, we put the land, number one, and we put in the money for impact fees. And if we're gonna continue to grow with our industrial, we have to do 491 and 4-lane it, because Holder Industrial Park will be a big hub for getting the raw products in and the finished products out, no matter what they are. We have got to have the way that the manufacturer can get his materials in and out. We're gonna have the people that work there, they have to get in and out. So the 491, as soon as we get the study back, we need to get everything moving instead of sitting on our hands for 4 or 5 years and saying, well, we're gonna. And last of all, we do need to do something for our citizens, and that's to make sure that the SCOP money keeps coming and that they don't eliminate the SCOP money. And anytime there's an opportunity for us to get SCOP money for our roads, our collector roads, they have to be fixed. We just did the one behind Publix in Crystal River, and it's really nice, or at least it's almost nice. It'll be done, it'll be finished. What they've done so far is really good. So the thing is, the money is for our citizens, okay? It is our taxes to go to the state, and we just like some of them back for some of the projects in our county.
So on appropriations request, do you want to leave them just these?
No, I don't want number 2 at this point.
Well, can you rank them for me?
Oh, sure, I want 1, then I want the one for septic is number 2.
No, we're only sticking, we don't.
All
have
right, I
those
want
either.
1 and 2, I want 1 and 3.
Okay, and then do you want to rank the 2
And then I
additional
want-
ones, the supplemental ones that we put in?
No, I don't, I think those we should do at our level.
Okay, these aren't appropriation
Okay,
request.
so we will, so those are the only 2 that I want, 1 and 3.
Thank you. Commissioner Finnegan.
Yeah, I think that we should leave the appropriations requests as is, and put the 2 supplemental under our special consideration. I mentioned it before, and Representative reiterated that we have all this money at the airport. If we got a business partner work towards that over the next year, we have a business partner, if we accomplish X, Y, Z, we need the state's help. Let's, we're gonna have this economic driver at that point, but I think that we need to look for some business to go in there. I think it's a great ask. I just don't know if it's a this year ask at this time. We have skin in the game for all 3 of those. I like our special consideration projects, and I think that we should be fluid. I think that if the lobbyist or our representative or our senator gets wind or hears of people liking something different, or something changes up there, or there's going to be money available, maybe we shuffle the deck a little bit at that time. Maybe it's going to be more in the grant stage, which they already have what we want in the grants. I think as money becomes available, we'll find out, we could plug in. But I think we need to finish the projects that we've started. And I do understand that the fire station's important. We have the impact fees. Thank you to our representative. I think that's a wonderful idea to add to our match, the value of the property, maybe the value or the percentage of infrastructure that leads to that property. I think that we could really build up our match amount with the assets that we're giving to that location. So I think that's a really good ask.
Commissioner Davis.
I think that I'd like to keep the three almost in the same order. I think that the fire station ought to be number 2 by a nose, not because I don't want the multipurpose path. I think it's critical. I was sitting here trying to remember if the TDC was approached for Halls River or not, for any match, for any grant funding on that. Since I don't have a clear memory of it, and I have a memory of all the other big stuff we've done, I'm thinking that it's never been explored, but that is one
That's a good
potential
idea.
avenue.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I have a pretty good memory of the stuff that the big stuff that we've funded through TDC, so, and some of the small stuff, so that's a, possible way to up that just a little bit. The fire station is particularly important to me because it is a big part of that economic development package, and also really nice to have, 20,900 residents that are most likely going to get much better insurance. So that's why I would bump it up to number 2. The easy one on Cardinal, I think it should go to MPO. The big one for the access management into Airport Business Park, I think we actually need to think bigger on this and more long-term, and we need to sell that as a big project. Mr. Howard brought up early in his time here that we should really look at, and we don't own the property, so we need to have an official conversation with the Citrus County Fair Association. But before all of that land gets bought up or appropriated around the Suncoast Parkway, I do think that that would be an outstanding economic decision for them to get new facilities somewhere else. And obviously, if it would have to be a collaborative effort, they would have to want to do it, we would have to help. But having that built out with renderings of what that entire project would look like is next level stuff. That's legacy stuff for us to leave behind, and we're moving the animal shelter, right? We can hopefully work with the Fair Association to move the fairgrounds, and then that becomes a painting the picture of where we want the roads, where we want the access, what we want that to build that up to be. That is next level stuff. So I'd like to see us actually take this and go much bigger with it and longer term.
Fair enough. That is something I've been talking to Mr. Howard about for 2 years, moving the Fairgrounds Association, and it ties in with the shelter because my idea has always been the shelter could be a multi-purpose use building, so when it's not in use as a shelter, you could use it for things that, a convention center, if you will, something, it would have multiple purposes, and you could tie it in around your fairgrounds. So thank you, Commissioner Davis, for bringing that forward. It's long been a dream of mine to facilitate that. I think if we got it in the middle of the county where the growth is happening and where the majority of our kids are going to be living, I think that makes a lot more sense. So, as much as I disagree with you all, because on the Inverness Airport is never meant to be asking for anything on transportation. It was meant for economic development. But I've heard you loud and clear, so we'll go a grant route on it and rework it. But I would also say that I would have, I just don't see the barge canal being the thing that we're gonna pull off in a year's time, with funding in a year's time. But I will stay with the theme of the group for consistency, but moving, the fire station to number 2 and the Halls River path to number 3.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I could agree with that.
Okay. All right, James, you have your marching orders.
I think we're good. Congratulations on passing your most comprehensive agenda yet.
So,
On a funny note, I'll leave with this. So my first, the fairgrounds, I attended the first fair. I'm a couple months on the job here. We still have the goldfish that my daughter won. So those are some special goldfish there. It's still alive, doing well. So I have
Thriving.
quite the affection for the fairgrounds.
I'll just say the last few words here to my board members and to who's ever in the audience and who's ever watching. We're gonna have a challenging year in front of us. We're gonna have some heavy lifts before us. We're gonna have an impact fee study that's coming back to us. I think as a board, we need to be very committed to projects, things like 491. You know, if we were putting a shovel in the ground today, it's $180 million, and we need 50% of that. So special projects, grants, federal, you know, having a federal lobbyist on, that means we're always going to need 50%. We're gonna have to make some tough decisions that we are actually going to start funding and setting aside those dollars out of our budget to be able to utilize the grants, and match out what we need to move our county forward. But always keeping our eye on the ball. How are we going to grow our revenue base? How are we gonna make our budget bigger? By doing the right things, by creating more job opportunities and having more economic development with higher wage jobs and changing the demographics of our county. So I think, you know, we can get there, but I caution all of you that this is the direction that our county's headed, and you know, get ready, because it's gonna be a fun year. I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you all for being here today, and God bless you, and a Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
And in the